Lord of Mysteries. Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 21 to 40. Whether a miracle worker's upper limit can create a nuclear bomb is a new topic worth studying. On whether the combination of mysticism and science can create a new system, maximizing the use of miracle workers, the close cooperation between the artisan God Church and miracle workers, necessary conditions for the mystification of technology. The consumption isn't much, one miracle worker is enough. With the effect of the golden hammer, the iron box became indestructible again. The magician continued to snap his fingers. He was no longer adding gas to the interior bit by bit. The exponential increase in internal air pressure was not only a test for the container but also for the magician himself. And as more gas is filled into a fixed space, the more miracles are consumed. As expected, Tang silently sighed as he watched the magician's face, which had begun to sprout flesh buds. The reason for not providing magical tools full of spirituality and extraordinary power is, in the final analysis, because the miracles consumed in this way are the greatest. However, even if only non-spiritual things without extraordinary power are provided, as the thing provided becomes more complex and difficult, the miracles it needs to consume will increase exponentially. The steam engine before was like this, and now filling a fixed space with gas is the same. The former represents complexity, and the latter represents difficulty. Otherwise, if a miracle worker directly wished for all the air in the world to disappear, most people would be finished. So, sequence is really important. A miracle worker is only sequence 2, not a true god, but if it were a true god-level wish, anyway, he isn't. As the filling of gas increased exponentially, the magician had to mobilize more miracles to occur here. Those gases were like uncontrollable prehistoric beasts. Each time a miracle occurred, the internal reaction became more violent. The magician's face began to twitch. The smile at the corner of his mouth began to tear his face, revealing the inside, and his body seemed to be melting away like a wax statue. His eyes stared at Tang beside him with a deathly silence. Tang spread his hands indifferently. There are, 17 minutes left, keep going. Magician. Why did this person give him an even more shameless feeling than that traveler before? Was he sure of victory? No way, the rules are like this. Tang held the golden hammer, knocking it whenever he saw the iron box deform, while also secretly instructing the system. System, are you ready? He had 8,815 knowledge fragments left. Ready, host. The artisan module is ready and has consumed 500 knowledge fragments. It is preheating. Remaining knowledge fragments, 8,315. There were 10 minutes left. Tang looked at the airtight iron lump. The thing inside began to deform. The originally transparent liquid began to show a turbid color. The magician's body paused, but he still snapped his fingers according to the principle. Tang once again knocked on the side of the iron box, reinforcing it. 7 minutes left. At this time, the gas inside had been compressed to the point where the magician had to slow down the amount of gas added. The originally clear and transparent water had become completely turbid, faintly shimmering with a metallic luster. 5 minutes left. The metallic luster continued to fill the entire iron box. 3 minutes left. Miracles had already occurred. The great power, judged by this huge theater as a creation miracle, was about to begin feeding back into itself. But Tang looked at the magician, who had once again twisted and deformed with the consumption of miracles. Tell me, what is the magician's principle? Naturally, he smiled, not to do unprepared performances. Tang suddenly retreated. He stopped reinforcing the container, and his left hand was wrapped with a dark, shimmering iron chain. The ruby adorning the end of the iron chain lit up slightly as spirituality was injected. All of the magician's attention was focused on the metallic solid condensing inside the iron box, and he didn't even have time to notice the change beside him. An iron chain pierced through his body. The reality enhancement law rapidly suppressed his existence. This was unknown whether it was a secret puppet or a historical projection. The magician, who had already melted like a wax figure, slowly turned his head, cracked his mouth, and revealed the dense white teeth inside. The newest novels are first published here. Miracle, Great. Dong. Tang held the dark golden hammer handle in his right hand and struck the palm of his left hand, which was wrapped in iron chains. Dong, dong, 500 knowledge fragments have been consumed. This enhancement will increase you to a demigod level. Duration: 60 seconds. The iron chain split at the end at this moment, and countless slender iron chains wrapped around the magician's body. And even more scattered around, touching the invisible walls, piercing into them, and breaking this invisible hidden place, completely destroying it. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The huge curtain was pierced by the enhanced iron chains, and the magical item with the demigod level reality enhancement law suppressed a corner of the theater in the next moment. This was only the tip of the iceberg for the entire theater, but it was indeed the perfect opportunity for Tang. This was a gap, and this gap would become a fatal weakness. Let me show you what art is. System, light it up. Under the gaze of countless secret puppets, a certain existence on the dome, and countless extraordinary individuals, the compressed matter, under the system's secret influence, completely exploded. 500 knowledge fragments have been consumed. This enhancement will increase you to a demigod level. You must know that metallic hydrogen has 30 to 40 times the explosive power of TNT. Enhance. Conduct a demigod-level enhancement of the physical properties of the metal inside the iron box. This will be the biggest fireworks show of the century. The blood in Tang's body was surging. Countless iron chains wrapped his body, and he retreated rapidly. In the shadows around him were countless wriggling bugs, pieced-together monsters, stagnant and rigid secret puppets, old men, children, men, women, extraordinary individuals, and even ordinary people. They silently watched Tang, who was wrapped and protected by countless iron chains, and then, with a bang, the box exploded. Within a thousandth of a second, the instantly vaporized heat wave and extremely terrifying temperature enveloped and devoured them. The scorching heat wave was like the most insane beast in the depths of the dark forest, illuminating everything around it. The earth was trembling, and the dome was swaying. The theater that could not end, the curtain was damaged. The reality enhancement law bound its torso, and countless secret puppets stood up ferociously, and then were completely swallowed by a corner of the gushing, surging flames. In the northwest corner of Tingen, the earth shook and the mountains swayed. Owen turned around abruptly, and Olsen, who had traveled to perceive the problem, turned pale. They both looked at the circus not far away. There, heat waves rolled, and the sky fell and the earth cracked. Task. Diviner, clown, magician. You seem to have arrived in a dimension that does not belong to the real world. Here, countless people are shouting for miracles. But what is a miracle? Could it be the slapstick performance of actors? Status. Completed. Task reward. This task is a phased task, and rewards will be accumulated. Note: if you spend the task rewards in advance, the quality of the final task reward will decrease. New task updated. Task. The theater never closes. Secret puppet, history, miracle. Divination, performance, weirdness. Disassembly, pile up, stitching. Above the dome seems to hide the miracle itself. Be careful, the power of miracles should not be underestimated. Of course, the audience should not be underestimated either. Note: this task is extremely dangerous, please choose carefully. Host. Current progress, final stage. Flames soared into the sky, and the scorching temperature made Tang feel that his skin would be roasted in the next moment. The sudden appearance of the demigod-level reality enhancement law did cause this huge theater master to suffer a great loss, but it could not shake its foundation. Once it reacted, these effects would quickly be repaired by the power of miracles. But a gap has appeared. Tang Wusheng let out a breath. The medium it was attached to was damaged by the reality enhancement law and the scientifically charged explosion, creating a gap. Those secret puppets suffered the first and most violent explosive impact. The reality enhancement law bound them, forcing them to watch as the flames engulfed them, watching the audience flee in panic. A corner of the theater was completely blown apart, and the bright sunshine outside made many extraordinary people who had been desperate feel hope for life. Ordinary people who had been made into secret puppets disappeared in the rising heat, heading to the kingdom of the gods they believed in. The remaining secret puppets were either missing arms and legs or had large areas of burns, and they no longer had much combat power. Of course, this refers to those affected, and, below demigod. The spirit body threads frantically converged and entangled. Tang rolled on the ground with the force and quickly looked up. Countless crisscrossing spirit body threads converged, and shadows were rapidly growing, wanting to cover the corner connected to reality again. Countless secret puppets walked out from the corners, from the shadows. Their faces were calm, revealing a deathly silence. Some of them spontaneously and quickly chased after the fleeing extraordinary people, while more of them looked at the instigator of all this. Among them were extraordinary people with deformed bodies, and even a demon with a huge body, horns on its head, and a sulphurous smell. The sudden explosion had killed many of them, but there were still more secret puppets hidden in the shadows. At this moment, they appeared and slowly moved forward, towards the instigator, like pilgrims. Not far from where Tang rolled, an old woman holding a crystal ball was staring at him coldly. She held up the crystal ball in her hand, but before Tang could react, he called out to the system while the golden hammer's strengthening of the iron chain had not yet passed. Craftsman, module is preheating. Loading complete. The iron chains wrapped around Tang, which had torn apart a corner of the theater and were used for the reality enhancement law, disappeared instantly. At the same time, an ancient bronze bell appeared behind him. Forcibly change the extraordinary power fixed in the magical item that has been made. The extraordinary power he wants to fix is death. The golden hammer struck the bronze bell again. The bronze bell, which had already been enhanced once and possessed the power of a demigod-level death law, was strengthened again at the demigod level. This time, he wants to fight against the spirit body threads of the secret puppets. Let all the spirit body threads of the secret puppets fall into a state of death. That is, the operation of secret puppets is prohibited here. Dong, dong. The melodious bell rang among countless secret puppets, cast down from the dome, and the spirit body threads manipulating countless secret puppets were rapidly disintegrating. The secret puppets closest to him seemed to have suddenly lost control of their bodies and collapsed. The melodious bell rang with the wind, spreading to the entire theater. If the death law targeting the spirit body threads had been used from the beginning, then it would most likely only affect those secret puppets sitting in the theater at that time, and more hidden things would not be affected. Facing a sequence 2, as someone on the same path, Tang could not possibly not know how strong the power of this level of sealed item would be. He didn't expect the explosion just now to destroy the entire theater at all. And if the remaining secret puppets were not dealt with together, the worst outcome would be being beaten to death by countless secret puppets. The newest novels are first published at. The golden hammer in his hand disappeared, and Tang flicked a match towards the top of his head while the deathlaw continued. The match burned violently, and Tang's figure suddenly appeared in midair. He had to take advantage of the fact that the power of miracles had been consumed for the most part, and that the attention of this sealed item was entirely on the enclosed environment, to seal it in one fell swoop. And he had something on him that could 100% seal this sealed item. The remaining reality enhancement law and the rapidly strengthening spirit body thread death law spread beneath this seemingly endless dome. A match after match was struck, and Tang's figure continued to approach the dome. The deepest part where the spirit body threads converged was a crystal carved like a heart, magnificent, and shimmering with a hazy color of dark gemstone. The dark gemstone, like a heart, seemed to sense Tang's intention. As he approached the dome, he seemed to be affected by some strange force and was rapidly pulled away. The distance was infinitely lengthened. This is a miracle. Tang once again had a hammer in his hand. It was a silver hammer shimmering with a dim luster. 500 knowledge fragments have been consumed. This weakening of yours will be upgraded to the demigod level. Remaining knowledge fragments, 6,315. He slammed it down in front of him. The power of miracles suddenly weakened. Space returned to normal, and with the help of the rising flames, Tang's distance to the dark gemstone narrowed again. But just then, on his body, under the light blocked by his clothes, some kind of strange color was flowing. Those shadows came alive. Countless shadows came to life. They grabbed Tang, restrained his neck, and pulled him down. At the same time, a figure he had never seen before appeared beside Tang, a middle-aged man whom he had not noticed, who had also appeared on a match, thanks to his flames. Black Knight, Trickster. The system's identification followed, and Tang's body turned into a rusty paper figure. A master of secret puppets. The middle-aged man wore a tall top hat and looked refined and gentlemanly. He laughed appropriately as he stared at Tang's face, seemingly mocking that everything the other party had done had become a wedding dress for others. Although it's a pity, your magical item really made my secret puppets a decoration as well. The Black Knight had appeared before, but Tang hadn't anticipated a seer pathway meander lurking in the theater. Secret Order. Or a wild demigod. As the paper figurine decoy took effect, Tang's figure lagged behind the two demigods. At the same time, he felt the manipulation coming from the spirit body threads. This wasn't the manipulation of the sealed artifact, but the sudden appearance of the seer, who wanted to turn him into his marionette. Of course, because the spirit body thread death law still existed, although the effect of the law had weakened a lot here, even being so close to this seer, with the interference of the death law, the manipulation of the spirit body threads was still affected, and it would take a considerable amount of time to turn him into a marionette. Moreover, Tang himself was a marionettist master, and he could also compete with the other party for the control of his own spirit body threads, thereby slowing down the marionettization speed. And now, that seer didn't put too much attention on Tang. He looked at the Black Knight, and with a silent air cannon, the Black Knight was immediately hit head-on by a powerful air blast. This caused the other party's huge body to drop a bit. And in this instant, Tang had a palm-sized book in his hand. I came, I saw, I recorded. The pages turned, and spirituality poured into the yellowish paper. Mysterious and ancient flavored strange patterns and symbols surged on the surface of the paper, and Tang aimed this magic book at the Black Knight who believed in the true creator. Banish. The illusory door constructed by countless symbolic symbols suddenly opened behind the Black Knight, and the enormous suction force and the air bullets relaunched by the seer formed a two-sided attack, causing the Black Knight, who was also being manipulated by the spirit body threads, to be swallowed by the illusory door. He was banished to a certain space, but the location of this space was still within this theater. A demigod-level banishment, if not specifically targeted, cannot banish the target to a space far away from this theater through a small gap blasted out by an explosion. Two demigods, one possibly carrying an extraordinary item, but a seer whose marionettes were forced to abandon under the influence of the death law, and the other a Black Knight who herds souls and whose origin is unknown, the most loyal hound of the true creator. A fool would know which one to deal with first. But, after the Black Knight was banished to an unknown space, the next one the seer would deal with was him. The middle-aged gentleman's gaze fell on Tang again. This kind and gentle middle-aged gentleman seemed to be quite curious about Tang. He reached out his hand, seemingly wanting to help Tang, but Tang at this time already felt the power of the other party's manipulation of the spirit body threads suddenly increase. This was not a play of mutual help, unity, and love, it was clearly eyeing the magical item in his hand. While resisting the manipulation of the spirit body threads, he planned to end the spirit body thread death law ahead of time, so that the spirit body threads controlled by the theater itself would also recover quickly. This theater seemed unable to directly transform people into marionettes, it required certain conditions to do so. And even if they were so close to the core, there might be marionettes that could quickly approach them. But as the gap in the theater was completely repaired, the marionettes revived again, and the two closest to its core would probably suffer a crazy attack from the marionettes. Just as Tang was planning to do this and put it into practice, the seer's manipulation of Tang's spirit body threads suddenly stagnated. He was a little surprised, and looked with some astonishment at the closing gap in the distance of the theater, where someone seemed to be looking at him from afar. At this moment, the seer seemed to have forgotten the thoughts in his mind, forgotten how to manipulate the spirit body threads of others. In just an instant, Tang, who had reacted, immediately began to counterattack, and a short staff inlaid with a green gemstone appeared in his hand. A life staff made with druid extraordinary characteristics. As long as spirituality is given, it can catalyze plants and make them become extraordinary life with spirituality. The short staff struck towards the seer. Countless vines grew out of the seer's body, and these vines with verdant greenery spread rapidly throughout his body, wrapping him into a zongzi. But in the next moment, the net woven by these vines sank in. They pounced on nothing. A paper figurine floated quietly among them, and at the same time Tang heard the sound of air being torn. Sequence 5 against Sequence 4, he must be at a disadvantage in the duel of extraordinary abilities. Under normal circumstances, unless this Sequence 5 has a powerful extraordinary item, it is extremely difficult to escape or defeat a demigod. The bursting air bullet also hit a paper figurine in the next second. Tang used the paper figurine decoy to escape again. All of this, from the miracle explosion, the appearance of the gap, to the activation of the death law, the breaking of the marionettes, spirit-body threads, and then to the demigod-level competition, all of this happened in the blink of an eye, and the amplification of the spirit-body thread death law was about to end, the gap was about to be filled, and the weakened power of miracles was about to descend again. This was a race against time, system. Before Tang could instruct the system what to do, suddenly, two figures instantly appeared beside him. The latest and most complete novels are published first. A knight in black armor stood in front of Tang, and Olsen also appeared abruptly beside the black-armored knight. At the same time, he only saw a virtual book that seemed to contain countless mysterious symbols in his hand. I came, I saw, I recorded, as spirituality poured in frantically, the pages turned, freezing on one of them. Olsen activated the demigod-level extraordinary ability he had recorded. Banish. The first banishment came from Olsen's magical item, that magic book, the target being the Black Knight who served the true creator. The second banishment came from Olsen, the extraordinary ability with divine power that he had recorded, the target being the seer in front of him. The illusory door opened behind the seer, and the invisible and powerful suction force caused the seer's body to involuntarily move closer to it. As long as this banishment was successful, then it would be difficult for the seer to come out and disturb them in a short time. Faced with this scene, the middle-aged gentleman still seemed calm. His gaze fell in one direction. That was in front of Owen, who was blocking Tang, the paper figurine bound by countless vines. Behind the paper figurine, in the place hidden by the shadows, there was a gold coin. Shadows seemed to flicker on the surface of the gold coin, and Tang realized the anomaly at this time. On that gold coin, there were countless spirit body threads connecting to the seer. Crap! Tang shouted in a low voice. Owen. The middle-aged gentleman smiled, and at the same time, the suction force of the illusory door behind him reached its maximum. A shadow flickered across the surface of the gold coin, and as the schemer smiled, a wraith emerged from it in the astonished gazes of Tang and the others. This secret puppet had somehow managed to avoid the effects of the death law. The schemer was carrying a secret puppet, and the operational possibilities for a schemer with a secret puppet were worlds apart from one without one. The schemer, firmly restrained by the gate of illusion, banished, replaced as the target of banishment by the wraith from the gold coin. This was an extraordinary ability belonging to the seer pathway at the demigod level, an extraordinary ability that allowed the controller of a secret puppet to swap positions with it. Faced with an extraordinary ability at the demigod level, flame jump and paper figurine substitution might not be able to escape its range of influence, so the schemer decisively chose to waste one of his secret puppets. As long as I can get this sealed artifact, I can always find another secret puppet. After the banished wraith was devoured by the gate of illusion, the gate abruptly closed. This also indicated that Olsen's recorded banishment had completely lost its meaning. But now was not the time to overthink things. At this moment, Owen held a huge broadsword in his hand, shimmering with a dark, ghostly light, and he slashed it towards the schemer who had appeared before him. With a crisp clang, a staff appeared in the schemer's hand. This staff was made of a special material, seemingly a magical item with an extremely hard texture. While blocking Owen's attack, the schemer also prepared to use Owen's force to break free from the surrounding spirit body vines and advance to the highest point. Don't even think about leaving. The illusory book in Olsen's hand trembled, and he once again used the recorder's extraordinary ability, a gale suddenly enveloping the schemer's body. Recorder, the schemer clicked his tongue, and his body once again turned into a paper figurine. A paper figurine substitute that had reached the demigod level displayed unparalleled convenience. At the same time, Owen and Olsen began to experience a sense of sluggishness in their bodies. They were being manipulated by the spirit body threads of the schemer before them. The memory of how to manipulate spirit body threads, which had been stolen before, had now returned, and he began to quickly turn the people before him into his new secret puppets. The demigod of the seer pathway truly lives up to the name, Cunning Rabbit in 3 burrows. They're really hard to kill. Tang gritted his teeth, and Owen said in a low voice, "Tang, close your eyes." After Owen finished speaking, he poured his spirituality into the armor on his body. At this moment, peculiar patterns, densely packed and crisscrossing, appeared on the all-black armor made from sequence 4 materials. Those patterns depicted scales, feathers, and wings, forming the appearance of an incomplete monster. The spiritual warning frantically alerted him, but the schemer, affected by the gale of the sailor pathway and a psychological suggestion planted at some unknown time, tilted his body and saw the patterns on Owen's armor. It was a feathered serpent. It was an incomplete mythical creature form of the death pathway. With a hum, the schemer's body trembled, his mind instantly blank, and his body stiffened. His manipulation of spirit body threads was also subconsciously interrupted. This was one of the extraordinary abilities fixed in the armor, capable of subjecting those who faced it to a mental shock from an incomplete mythical creature. Even though the artisan had fixed 3 extraordinary abilities to it, their power had been weakened to varying degrees, but a sequence 4 would at least be rigidity for 3 seconds from directly facing the mythical creature form of another pathway. It worked. Tang, with his eyes closed to avoid being affected by the armor, pushed Owen from behind using the clown's intuition, violently shoving him towards the schemer who was cursed by the armor in midair. Owen raised the broadsword in his hand, ready to behead the other party in the next second. But the schemer was holding a staff in his hand, shimmering with a strange light. In the next moment, the schemer leaned backward, and even in midair, he used his nimble body control ability to dodge Owen's beheading action. "You're very powerful. If I didn't possess a moment of luck, then perhaps you really could have succeeded." The schemer, who had already escaped the influence of the armor's curse, still had an elegant smile on his face. He seemed to be tired of entangling with them and disappeared again. "I don't know how much longer that secret puppet master's extraordinary item can last. I have to hurry, I can't waste any more time. After all, as long as he got this sealed artifact, these extraordinary individuals would eventually become his secret puppets anyway." The schemer had thrown out a matchstick at some unknown time, and the matchstick had now reached the dome. "It's too late." Tang lowered his eyes, letting gravity pull him down. The matchstick burst into flames, and the schemer flame jumped to the side of the dome. He was wearing a pair of all-white gloves on his hand, preparing to quickly and accurately grab the jewel that pulsed like a heart. "You are mine." He was already fantasizing about the scene after obtaining this level 0 sealed artifact. He would obtain more resources, stronger secret puppets, and have more say. Olsen also traveled to Tang's side in the next moment, and he prepared to take Owen and Tang away from here. They couldn't stay here. Their safety was more important than snatching that sealed artifact. But in the next moment, a dark curtain fell in a corner. It obscured the dazzling sunlight, blocked the intersection between spirituality and spirituality, blocked the prying of the outside world, blocked the only channel of communication between the outside world and the inside, and even allowed this theater to return to concealment once again. The newest and most complete novels are all published on Vertex Novel Network. The corner of the theater that had been blown open had already been repaired. A crazy roar echoed on the huge and insane stage. Miracle! Miracle! The miracle of life, the miracle of creation. Miracle! Miracle! The miracle of all things, the eternal miracle. Olsen's expression suddenly changed. Go. When he wanted to travel through the spirit world, he found that travel had once again lost its effect. The death law of the spirit body threads had also completely lost its control over the secret puppets at this moment. Countless secret puppets raised their heads and looked at the dome, shouting miracles. Several secret puppets rose into the air and flew quickly towards them. The schemer completely ignored these secret puppets. In order to recover this level 0 sealed artifact, he had specially prepared sealing items for this purpose. As long as he got this sealed artifact, then, the schemer's idea was good, but in the next instant, the magnificent, heart-like jewel in front of him disappeared. It disappeared. In an almost playful manner, it suddenly disappeared. What reappeared in front of the schemer was a burly devil, exuding a sulfurous smell. Swapped positions with the core and the secret puppet? The schemer said with a hint of disbelief, and in the next moment, his face was pressed tightly against the devil's fist. With a crack, the sound of bones breaking seemed to come from the dome. At this moment, Owen and Olsen's actions of forcibly breaking through the spirit world blockade through their magical items and travel abilities froze again. Tang's perspective saw what was below. There, large numbers of secret puppets fell. He saw that among the more secret puppets that were still standing, the spirit body threads generated by the swapped theater core were rushing towards them like crazy. Thoughts fell into stagnation, and the body began to stiffen. They were caught. The first to fall into a state of stagnation were the sorcerer and Tang. The theater core, at the cost of abandoning some of its marionettes, planned to forcibly control them and turn them into marionettes. Extraordinary characteristics converge. This thing will first target Beyonders of the Seer pathway. The sorcerer was still struggling, and his struggle was much more intense than Tang's. The twisting, spreading spirit threads were mostly aimed at him. What remained to be dealt with were a Sequence 5 Marionette Master and a Sequence 5 Traveler. One was a Beyander of this pathway, and the other was a Beyander of a neighboring pathway. On the contrary, Owen, a Sequence 6 of the Death pathway, who also carried a demigod-level extraordinary item, was placed last by the theater core. But this did not mean that the pressure they endured was less than that of the sorcerer. So, it has come to this step. Sequence 2. Miracle Invoker. Tang thought, as expected of a sealed artifact at the angel level that destroys cities at the drop of a hat. It seemed that all of them were done for. Even the sorcerer, who almost succeeded, was the same. He had obviously learned about the never-ending theater beforehand, and may even have come specifically for it, but he still fell into this pit and couldn't climb out. The sorcerer versus the miracle invoker. He had no chance of winning, even if the opponent was a living, sealed artifact that still operated according to certain rules. His thinking was already stagnant. Although the death commandment was still ongoing, the demigod level bonus from the golden hammer had disappeared. Only the mid-sequence strength death commandment could no longer control the theater core's manipulation of the spirit threads. No, it shouldn't be like this, no. The sorcerer was struggling desperately. Tang could see the spirit worms on his body constantly trying to destroy the countless threads pulling at his spirit body. In his desperate struggle, he revealed the form of a mythical creature, transparent worms shimmering with three-dimensional mysterious symbols, writhing madly but unable to shake the source in the slightest. But this violent struggle aroused even more intense targeting from the theater core. Tang looked at Olsen and Owen. Owen was in a slightly better state. The demigod-level extraordinary item on his body enhanced the strength of his spirit body. Otherwise, Owen, who was only Sequence 6, might have been the first among them to become a marionette. Olsen had obviously been initially controlled. The struggling expression on his face was gradually disappearing, beginning to transform into a puppet constantly chanting, "Miracle." They were frozen in midair, and after being turned into marionettes, they would probably have to stay under this dome for a while. Or rather, be hung up and dried like cured meat for a while. System. Host, I'm here. Although Tang's thinking was stiff, the feeling of stiffness disappeared instantly after he summoned the system. The miracle invoker's manipulation of spirit threads was much more powerful than the sorcerer's. Tang did not dare to be careless, using the system's high level to influence the spirit thread's control over him. This made Tang feel much better. Let's begin, just like we planned when we came in. Okay, host. After the system said this, its voice seemed to become very distant, as if it were preparing for something. Tang. Owen's voice made Tang turn his head with some difficulty. He saw Olsen, who had begun to babble about miracle and creation, still holding up the illusory book, keeping it open to a certain page. The page, shining with light spots, looked somewhat dim. Olsen was probably about to lose his self-will. You first get rid of, complete, request, should also be able to, leave. Owen's voice was intermittent, take, thing, away. He was referring to the armor on his body. In this situation, it was best to save whoever could be saved. Tang was silent. So, what did you guys come in here for? Host. Tang sighed silently, then reached out his hand. Initialization complete. 5,000 knowledge fragments have been consumed. For the next 30 seconds, all of your memories will be unsealed. At the same time, you will gain a unique extraordinary ability. The system is stabilizing you, you have obtained. Tang's hand touched Owen's armor, touched Olsen's illusory book. Ascension. At this moment, it was as if some kind of shackle in his mind was being released. Sealed memories and his own special nature were awakening. His level began to rapidly increase, exceeding the level brought by the Marionette Master's potion. Knowledge, one who seeks. The system's voice gradually faded away. In an instant, Tang felt like he was being dragged by something. He closed his eyes. Those were his memories. The memories of him reading books in his room. Desk lamp, mobile phone, air conditioner, snacks, were memories from a long time ago. Countless images flashed wildly before his eyes, combined with the text on the mobile phone. He saw the spirit world, which only retained countless symbolic symbols, saw the 7 lights held high above his head. Saw the hazy gray-white mist above the 7 lights, vaguely saw countless cocoons, saw a gate of light. He saw the darkness that light could not illuminate, saw the hidden fear in the deepest part of the underground. He saw the gray-white illusory tide, saw the straight, wide, illusory, colorless dim river, the figures wandering on both sides of the river, saw the huge figure in the river. He saw the starry sky, saw countless stars, saw the moon, the flawless white moon. He saw the great existence entrenched among countless stars, saw the holy land like a divine kingdom. Saw the gale blowing between the stars, saw the waves, saw the pure white sun, saw countless images. The images constantly zoomed out and zoomed in, sometimes rising and sometimes falling, saw a corner of this planet, saw the Hornassus Mountains, saw countless marionettes. Saw the figure wearing a simple white robe, saw the existence wearing a monocle. Saw the evil spirits in the underground, saw the cultists, they seemed to be trying to summon something, praying to something. Like an observer, like a reader watching a filmed work. Finally, the picture fell into darkness. Tang saw the last scene. Saw an unknown place, a place full of uncleanliness and filth, something cast a gaze of attention. Countless symbols of occultism were dazzlingly bright, suddenly drawing him away from here, taking him away from here before that gaze could see him, before that gaze could lock onto him. The next moment, Tang opened his eyes. Don't listen, don't think, don't look. In this state, his voice twisted into an indescribable murmur. Crazy knowledge was attached to the surface of Tang's clothes in an incomprehensible way, weaving it into a loose, pure white coat. Next, it's time to let this thing have a good lesson. A brain that can't learn knowledge is better off being blown up. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. The maddened Sequence 5 magician slowly, bit by bit, turned his head under the manipulation of the spirit threads. What happened? He was somewhat dazed, and the spirit worms constantly yang-chu from his body also quieted down at this moment. The manipulation of the spirit threads became sluggish, and the surroundings fell silent again. The Sequence 5 puppet master who was shouting for miracles seemed very, very far away from him. Everything was frozen in place. What happened? His thoughts seemed to be elevated to a strange height, allowing him to see his own body with his own eyes. It was himself, gradually descending into madness because he had forcibly used the mythical creature form to try to break free from the manipulation of the spirit threads. In front of him was a pitch-black armor, seemingly a sealed artifact at the demigod level of the death pathway. A illusory book, probably the record keeper, but judging from the previous battle, a traveler. And after that, the Sequence 5 puppet master. But the magician's thoughts froze for a moment. The position where the Sequence 5 puppet master should have been was now like a pure white. No, that couldn't describe it either. It was more like a pure white piled up with countless symbolic symbols in the sense of mysticism, a color in the sense of mysticism that appeared because various mystical symbols were layered upon each other. And that thing, his intuition was frantically reminding him, really frantically reminding him. Don't look, don't look. You will die, you will definitely die. To be able to touch the spiritual intuition of a demigod-level seer, making him feel the fear of true death, what exactly was in that pure white? The reminder of his spiritual intuition made the magician want to break free from this state. If he just tried a little harder, he could really break free from the manipulation of the spirit threads. He could still leave, he could still go back. He still had a chance. However, from within the pure white, something seemed to be looking at him. Then, something suddenly poured into his head. The first thing that poured in was a potion formula. Sequence 3, Ancient Scholar. Main materials: 1 pair of Fugenhound's eyes, 1 flocculated heart of a mist wolf. Supplementary materials: 100 milliliters of Fugenhound's blood, 30 grams of mist wolf's frost crystals, a large number of authentic ancient historical records. Advancement ritual: completely detach from reality for at least 300 years, and consume the potion after you have become history and no longer belong to the current era. This was the Sequence 3 potion formula for the seer pathway. The magician was overjoyed, followed by relevant knowledge about the Fugenhound and the mist wolf, as well as the extraordinary abilities of this sequence. These were all things he needed. Before the overjoyed emotions could pass, before the magician could even digest and complete the memory of this formula, the next piece of knowledge poured in again. Sequence 3 of the Death Pathway, Ferryman. Main materials. Supplementary materials. Advancement ritual. Knowledge of main abilities and corresponding materials. The magician was a little confused as to why there would be a Sequence 3 potion formula for the Death Pathway, but he still planned to memorize it. After reaching the demigod level, resource exchanges mostly happened in the form of bartering. Perhaps he could use this Sequence 3 potion formula to exchange for something else he needed. Before he could write it down, the next potion formula appeared again. Sequence 3 of the Door Pathway, Wanderer. Main materials. Supplementary materials. Advancement ritual. Knowledge of main abilities and corresponding materials. The magician quickly realized something was wrong. The amplitude of knowledge flashing became faster and faster. It seemed that the knowledge transferer was not very adapted at the beginning, but after sending the knowledge a few times, its speed was obviously much faster than at the beginning, and the amount of knowledge was also increasing. Every symbol was flashing, and the knowledge chained together by every byte was pouring into his spirit body at a terrifying speed. From potion formulas to rituals, from ancient knowledge to those secret taboos, more and more, faster and faster. Knowledge, like a tide, swept towards him. No, wait. Stop. Stop it now. However, the knowledge transmitted from the pure white figure not only did not stop, but also mixed in more mysterious, and more bizarre things. The Saphira Castle. The appearance of this concept caused the magician's mind to crash on the spot. What was the Saphira Castle? He was at a loss and didn't know what to do. The Lord of the Mysteries. Lord of the Mysteries. The magician didn't realize that his spirit body was now becoming strange. Countless mystical symbolic symbols were like patches, layering upon layer on his body. His spirit body began to become heavy, and endless knowledge shone on his spirit body, turning him into a pure white as well. He went mad. His body was cracking. The magician cracked. Cracked in a physical sense. The spirit worms were like a final frenzy before death. They crawled out from the magician's skin, from his eyes, ears, and mouth. More of the spirit worms that were flashing with symbols were replaced by another symbol. That was. He understood something, he obtained something from that endless knowledge, but there was no longer a chance to tell or inform others. Before the spirit threads could completely manipulate him, the magician fell and died in a bizarre way. The countless, behind-the-scenes hands, who were planning to manipulate the magician's spirit threads were obviously stunned. Now, 5 seconds had passed. There were 25 seconds left. After pouring in the knowledge and killing the magician who was the first to practice on him, Tang's gaze turned to the spirit threads on Owen and Orson. At the same time, through his own spirit threads that were being manipulated, he made a move that was even more drastic than the magician's counterattack. The angel's position can resist the pollution of the outer gods. Then what about a dead angel? Can it resist the position of knowledge? Can it resist the infusion of endless knowledge? The sequence before Miracle Invoker was Seer. Surrounded by countless puppets, the old woman holding a crystal ball looked blank and flustered. She didn't know what was happening, and she couldn't even remind them. At this time, Tang had already grasped the spirit threads on Owen and Orson. The twisted and crazy voices caused Owen and Orson to show signs of losing control, but Tang didn't have time to deal with these things now. The system's current state could only last for 30 seconds. To extend it, it would cost an additional 1,000 knowledge fragments per second. Even if he had saved so many knowledge fragments over the years, there still weren't enough for it to deduct. Host, knowledge can also be transmitted through spirit threads. The spirit threads were the extraordinary power given by the puppet master, and all the places where the spirit threads floated were the core locations of this theater. This was the same even if the position was changed through puppets. The constantly throbbing heart seemed to sense something, and the marionette near the dome was also rapidly slowing down. The marionette demon, obtained through exchange, wanted to leave when the Sequence 5 magician in front of it died, but Tang had invaded its spiritual thread with the extraordinary ability of a marionette master. In terms of marionette manipulation, he certainly couldn't compare to this theater, but what he wanted now wasn't the control of this demigod-level marionette, but to increase the channel and speed of knowledge transfer. After entering the knowledge seeks man state, Tang discovered that his current seer was much higher than that of a Sequence 2 miracle worker. Because of my transmigrator status, and the seer of the system itself. And the principle behind the special buff, knowledge seeks man, in the system is the infiltration of a higher seer into a lower seer. Those who have gone to school probably know that infiltration refers to the phenomenon where water molecules move from a place with high water potential to a place with low water potential in two solutions with different concentrations. Comparing seer to a solution, with more water molecules, the side with the higher seer will naturally move towards the side with fewer. Similarly, knowledge, thoughts, and behavior are also like this. From a certain point of view, the process of taking a look at those high sequence extraordinaries and then obtaining knowledge, or the phenomenon of high sequence extraordinaries consciously influencing low sequence extraordinaries in the same pathway, can all be understood as a simple version of knowledge seeks man. However, most of those high-level beings are unable to control this behavior, or do not utilize it thoroughly. From a mystical perspective, the speed of infiltration depends on the difference between the seers and the controllable channels. The greater the difference, the more channels, the greater the speed and size of this transmission. Channels based on seeing, hearing, thinking, and understanding have a relatively slow rate of knowledge infiltration. Relying on the spirit world's transmission speed is faster. And a higher level, more convenient method requires a certain connection with the object to be infiltrated. For example, the spiritual thread. Knowledge began to be instilled. Perhaps it can't make this theater lose control, but it's enough to let it close for a little while. He stuffed the information he knew, understood, and supplemented by the system about starry sky, source quality, true God, old days, etc., through the four threads of spiritual threads. Those countless spiritual threads, one end extending to the infinitely distant dome, and the other end surrounded by countless marionettes below. In the eyes of a marionette master, this was the perfect medium. Sure enough, at the moment the knowledge was instilled, Tang saw abnormalities in the marionettes in one place. They began to lose control. After receiving the knowledge, which also contained some system, private goods, the core of the theater was affected by the crazy knowledge. Each piece of knowledge carried a seer, and each piece of knowledge poured in one after another. They compressed the theater's living characteristics irrefutably, and the power of extreme pollution and destruction, which made people degenerate and lose control, caused the theater to differentiate into spirit worms. Those countless shriveled and dried worms, as if lifted by thin threads, crawled rapidly in Tang's vision, burrowing into some marionettes. They took away a portion of the knowledge, and also made those marionettes who accepted the spirit worms completely crazy. They no longer shouted miracles, each of them was a demigod-level powerhouse before their death. Some grew feathers on their bodies, some had their bodies collapsed, some had fresh flowers blooming on their bodies. They were already dead, and the dead spirit worms brought about another change to their bodies. Even after being made into marionettes, they still have to be whipped. And the other marionettes who did not accept the spirit worms also lost control because the core had fallen into madness. Now is the time. Following the spiritual thread, Tang's body transformed into the pure white knowledge itself and crawled over. The novel experience was indeed very interesting. Appearing before the crystal clear, constantly throbbing core like a heart, Tang added another, knowledge infiltration, just to be safe, and then reached out and touched it. The theater core, like a heart, felt very soft to the touch, like a pudding, and one could feel the surging blood inside. And getting closer, Tang could see that in the most central position, there were strips of dry worm corpses, wrapped in the outer pudding, wriggling. Recycle. 7 seconds left. Recycling a sealed artifact corresponding to a miracle worker has permanently sealed the corresponding sealing method. The system's warehouse, this was the item on him that could seal it 100%. Even the uniqueness had to stay there obediently. And the theater core, which was being baptized by crazy knowledge and stiffened in place, could no longer escape Tang by changing the position of the marionette, as it had done in the hands of the Sequence 5 magician before. Soon, an item appeared in the system's warehouse column. Item information, the everlasting theater. At the same time, the surrounding scenes were withering and decaying. Owen and Orson, who had also accepted a low degree of knowledge seeks man, in midair, also fell down. The miracle that supported them in midair had disappeared, and the ancient clock that originally followed the Death Edict had also disappeared. Countless iron chains caught them and hung them upside down there. It was more like dried bacon waiting to be dried. Tang stood in place, and the pure white coat on his body was also slowly disappearing. Next, before Tang could react, a large sword fell from above. Die. That was the exiled Black Knight. Crack, crack. Transparent bones emerged from the void, and the great sword struck the countless bones, making a crisp sound. At the same time, the Black Knight seemed to see something extremely terrifying. He didn't even make a roaring sound. His bones trembled, and the body hidden behind the cold armor began to decay, rot, and wither, ushering in final death. Sequence 4 of the Secrecy Pathway, Black Knight, killed with one blow. It seems have come at the wrong time. A gentle voice came from not far away, from the entrance of the circus that was now constantly disappearing and changing. No, Father. Right on time, the knowledge seeks man buff ended. Tang turned around and saw the bronze-skinned Baron Ramde. He smiled, "You've come at just the right time." Seeing his second son, the Death Consul softened his eyebrows and walked in. At the moment he stepped into the theater, the endless dome, the stitched monster, the crazy marionettes, the audience, shouting miracles, all began to fade rapidly, swept away like a hurricane, and were returned to the warehouse by the system. "I didn't expect you to be quite useful." Tang praised the system. Hee. The system was also very happy, because there was something it wanted among the marionettes. A big profit, a big profit. By the way, let's chat when we go back. What exactly are you? System. Not hee. Owen and Orson, who were hanging in the air like bacon, aren't there anyone speaking up for us? Task. The theater never closes. Secret puppet, history, miracle. Divination, performance, weirdness. Disassembly, stacking, sewing. Above the dome seems to hide the miracle itself. Be careful, the power of miracles should not be underestimated. Of course, the audience should not be underestimated either. Task stage, 3/3. Status, completed. Congratulations, host, on completing the stage task The Theater That Never Closes. Rewards have been issued, please pay attention to check. Task status has been updated. Task. The acting of a secret puppet master. You, who have been promoted to Secret Puppet Master, have summarized certain acting rules. Please follow the acting rules and gradually improve the acting content to increase the digestion of the potion. Task completion, 7%. The theater is fading and disappearing, leaving only ruins. The circus, which looked a bit dilapidated but still decent, is now a mess. The performers don't know where they went, and whether they are safe now. Tang already had a guess about their ending, and sighed silently in his heart. This world is too harsh on the bottom people. Even people who are well-behaved may become victims once they encounter any extraordinary events. This is a cannibalistic world. Before the people from the church arrive, I think it's time for us to leave. The afterglow of the setting sun still hung not far away. The previous explosion obviously alarmed the attention of the church's extraordinary people. Before they arrived, Baron Ramde approached and stood beside the Black Knight who was brutally murdered. The Black Knight had returned to his original appearance. The corpse, like a mummy, faintly revealed a strange color. That was the extraordinary characteristic belonging to the Black Knight that was slowly condensing. At this time, two skeletal skeletons as tall as 4 meters drilled out from the ground. One grabbed the Black Knight, and took his extraordinary characteristics that were constantly separation into the spirit world, and the other looked at Olsen squatting on the ground who wanted to vomit. The black flames in his eyes were burning brightly. Olsen, Mom, there are dirty things staring at me. Owen limped over, looking like he was really uncomfortable being hung there just now. Father. Baron Ramde nodded, looked at his eldest son, and glanced at the dark armor on the other person, and said nothing more, pulling his eldest son and second son into the spirit world where the colors were intensely superimposed. After passing through the spirit world again, several people had returned to the castle. Olsen was grabbed out of the spirit world by the skeletal skeleton, and coupled with the fact that he was almost turned into a secret puppet before, and almost lost control, his state at this time was terrible. The place where several people appeared was the castle's small church. The holy emblem of the goddess of the night was placed here, and there seemed to be some kind of quiet luster flashing. Baron Ramde looked up at the holy emblem symbolizing the goddess of the night. His gentle eyes turned a bit colder, he twitched the corners of his mouth, and said nothing. Are you okay? Tang walked to Olsen and squatted down, feeling that he still had to care for his old friend. Olsen waved his hand, indicating that he would be fine after vomiting for a while. Although there were some slight signs of losing control. This is much better than when I heard those voices before. Olsen smiled wryly with a pale face. Tang nodded, then I'll find someone to take you to the guest room to rest first. Okay, vomit. This wanting to vomit but not being able to is really uncomfortable, making Tang also want to vomit a couple of times. However, the voice Olsen heard before. Muttering. Mr. Door. Tang thought thoughtfully. Owen walked over and patted Tang on the back as he stood up. You should go and rest for a while too, I'll talk to father about what happened today. Okay. Tang glanced at Baron Ramde who was waiting for them, and nodded. The tense nerves relaxed slightly, and at this time he suddenly realized that his spirituality was almost bottoming out. The series of operations just now almost squeezed his spirituality and energy every second. Now that he was out of danger and the task was successfully completed, he felt the fatigue and dull pain on his body. As expected, when people get excited, all that runs in their blood vessels is adrenaline. Tang braced himself and walked back to his room from the small church, closed the door and planned to meditate to recover the loss of his spirituality. Tang didn't come out for dinner. When Mrs. Boyanka saw her husband who should have left reappearing here, she looked a little surprised, but quickly accepted it. Owen tugged at his leg, grinning. After Mrs. Boyanka finished eating and left, Owen talked to Baron Ramde about what happened today. The newest and fastest novels are published first. Host, it is now standard time, 4 minutes past 2. Tang opened his eyes, without any sleepiness. He went to bed too early last night, and he hadn't received or sorted out many things yet. He simply got up, but was sealed there when he left the bed. After struggling for a while, he decided to satisfy his heart and opened the system interface while lying on the bed. Stage task, the theater that never closes. Task status, completed. Congratulations, host, identification times plus 20, remaining identification times, 134 times. Craftsman, usage times plus 10, remaining forging times, 23 times. Knowledge fragment quantity plus 1000, remaining knowledge fragment quantity, 2316. Number of bionic puppet creations plus 1, remaining number of creations, 1. Are you still troubled by the lack of agility of your secret puppet? Are you still worried that the distance of the secret puppet is too far to operate? Will you feel sorry for having to abandon the old secret puppet because you got a new secret puppet? The new bionic secret puppet meets the various needs of the secret puppet master. P.S. Should sequence 4 be converted to a mystic alchemist? Yes, yes. Also, P.S. Switching to alchemist can increase the number of bionic puppet creations. That's it. Tang's mind was full of, that's it. That's it. He wasted so many knowledge fragments desperately, and then gave him so little stuff. Also, where did you learn this GG-flavored rhetoric? Tang's mouth twitched, and he sat up from the bed. What is this bionic puppet? In layman's terms, it's similar to AI control. The system was also very honest. It can set the background, personality, etc. for the secret puppet you control. According to the integrity of the setting, it will automatically supplement the remaining related content. When encountering events, the secret puppet does not need the secret puppet master to control it and will automatically react according to its own personality, puppet setting. As the number of reactions increases, the secret puppet's personality, puppet setting will continue to improve itself. Okay, this world is a giant chat GPT. The most important point is that it will allow the secret puppet's applicable range to no longer be limited to the area around the secret puppet master. As long as the place is covered by the spirit world, secret puppets equipped with this bionic puppet module can be manipulated at any time. The system looked like it wanted to be praised, and the corners of Tang's mouth twitched. The more he listened, the more he felt like he was stuffing something made by an alchemist into the secret puppet. This ability of yours isn't a temporary development, is it? How could it be? Believe your lies. Tang looked at the newly appeared, bionic puppet, module in the system interface, thought for a while, and decided to wait until he could get a satisfactory one, since he only had a sequence 6 puppet. After all, puppets cannot grow. Even if you feed them potions, they will only combine into bizarre sealed artifacts. The puppets themselves cannot be promoted. Even if he installed this module, the processor would still be him, and the puppets would still be dead people. Speaking of which, where did the wraith controlled by the trickster go before? In the theater, the trickster avoided Olsen's banishment by exchanging positions with the puppet. Logically speaking, after disappearing in the theater, he should have been thrown out. It was made into a puppet. The system replied, at that time, in that theater, everyone who was not yet a puppet was attacked. Except for the Black Knight of the Seer pathway, everyone else, including the wraith banished and no longer controlled by the trickster, as well as the beyonders and ordinary people who were still in the theater at the time, have been made into puppets. Quote, quote. So many people have disappeared in Tingen. The church will launch a detailed investigation into this large-scale disappearance, and there may even be a demigod from the Holy Cathedral coming to investigate. After all, it involves sealed artifacts at the angel level. However, even if they investigate, the theater itself is at the sequence 2 level, plus the influence of multiple demigod-level puppets within, as well as his father's level, the system's level, and his own level when entering. Knowledge hunts people, mode, etc. If they want to know through divination, beyonders who are not good at divination will probably only run into a brick wall. Divination failure is fine, but if they succeed in divination, anyone below the demigod level would be in for a world of trouble. Tang simply ignored this bionic puppet module for now and looked at his warehouse. To be precise, the system's mission rewards are quite satisfactory and not unexpected. After all, he has done a lot of missions. The system rarely gives things directly. Most of them are appraisal opportunities, craftsman opportunities, or knowledge fragments. It is also possible that the system is also very poor. The highlight of this mission is still here. Tang rubbed his hands, feeling like he was opening a blind box in his previous life. Opening the system introduction, a dense mass of text appeared before his eyes in an instant. Good fellow, really good fellow. Tang's eyes widened. Sealed artifact, the never-ending theater. Item information, a sealed artifact born from the combination with the Beander characteristic of a sequence 2 miracle inventor, maintaining a considerably high degree of being alive. Description, This is a box that looks like an ordinary box. When the lid is opened, you can see that the inside is a simple theater. On the stage and in the auditorium are many lifelike puppet models. It is not difficult to see that some of the models have quite painful expressions. When the box is opened, the theater will unfold a special curtain around the box. The curtain will take up to 6 minutes to fully form, during which the area covered by the curtain will continue to expand. Without an audience, the curtain will cover a maximum of a 100 mx 100 meters cubic space in the real world, while the internal space has no spatial limitations. All spiritual beings wrapped in the curtain will be passively drawn into the theater and become members of the audience. Only by fulfilling the theater's requirements can they leave. As the number of audience inside increases, the range of the curtain will continue to expand. Note: within the range covered by the curtain, it has the ability to sever internal and external connections to a certain extent. As the number of viewers increases, this power to sever connections will also become stronger. Tang paused when he saw this. The seer pathway should be sequence 1. Only after reaching the mystery prior does one possess the ability to create something similar to a kingdom of gods. Was it because it was affected by the hidden power of the night pathway or other pathways during the Four Emperors' War, causing the sealed artifact formed after this miracle inventor died to possess such abilities at the same time? Or is it because there are demigods or angels with similar Beyonder abilities among the puppets it controls? Or did it use the power of miracles to give the curtain it made the authority of concealment? Not sure, let's take a look. Beyonder abilities. Has the power to accumulate miracles. The more miracles others fulfill, the stronger the power it unleashes. This is the most core Beyonder ability. Can move the entire theater into a certain historical void, which can last for 30 minutes. Can reproduce people who have entered the theater, up to 6 people, 2 at the angel level. Can turn people who do not meet the requirements of the miracle into puppets. Can perform divination. Magicians possess magic performances. Single quote, single quote. Negative effects. Every person who enters the theater must fulfill a miracle to leave. If they do not fulfill a miracle, they will become a puppet. When you enter the theater, it means that a part of you has become a puppet. The spiritual thread will gradually be controlled by the theater. Even if you perform and do not become a puppet, you will continue to become a puppet over time. At the same time, if the number of viewers in the theater does not increase within a period of time, the spiritual thread will randomly control people outside the theater to enter the theater. Sealing method. Tell it a miracle that it can achieve with its level, but cannot be easily achieved, and store it in a black box, placing it in a closed space. No items with spiritual threads are allowed within 50 meters. In other words, even beyonders of the fate pathway, if they are lucky enough not to be called by name, will become puppets over time. And even if someone realizes the problem with the theater and doesn't come in, it will forcibly pull people in. The negative effects should not be considered many compared to other angel-level sealed artifacts, but they are all very targeted and difficult to complete, difficult to satisfy. For example, the first one, if you want to leave, you must show a miracle. Except for Olsen, who satisfied the industrial miracle with the principle of the steam engine he provided, and he, who created metallic hydrogen by compressing water to satisfy the creation miracle, no one can leave. All in all, there is a lot of content besides these, but most of them are consistent with the seer pathway. Regarding the puppets, Tang looked at the dense list below, and after asking the system to give him an abridged version, he found that the only demigod-level puppets in the theater, besides the Sequence 4 demon, were a Sequence 3 war bishop of the Red Priest pathway. The number was less than he thought. There are only 2 demigod-level puppets, the others are historical projections. Well, that's normal. After all, demigod puppets are not common. However, Tang didn't see that Sequence 3 puppet until he died. It should have been the theater's trump card. As a result, knowledge hunts people, directly cut it down. Tang directly pulled the list to below those 2 demigod puppets, where there was a special puppet. Puppet. Meatball. He didn't complain about why the system's naming was so strange. When he saw this name, he thought of the monster that the Black Knight had dealt with before. This should be his biggest gain from this adventure besides the miracle inventor's sealed artifact itself. The system interface showed a lump. Yes, it really was a lump of Beander characteristics gathered together, forming an indescribable thing. Merely beholding this indescribable mass caused one's blood to run cold and a chill to pervade the body. Its physical structure wasn't simply flesh and blood. Icy, twisted heads were embedded in its surface, countless legs and feet of unknown origin dotted it, internal organs were exposed, a beating heart, a churning stomach, lungs that expanded and contracted with the flow of air, blood roiling, and mutated, multicolored blood flowing through protruding veins. Impurity and twisted intent formed various mental pollutions that constantly radiated outward. This monster, a melange of countless extraordinary characteristics, was still alive. Each pulse, each movement, faintly conveyed praise for the sun, praise for the true creator, hymns to the gods, exaltation of the great existence, declarations of miracles, or simply the bizarre, self-muttering whispers. If there were any sins in this world worthy of divine judgment, then this being, which could no longer be called a monster, would surely be one of them. Tang Ju felt that if it weren't for the layer of the system, merely gazing upon it would cause his spirit body to collapse instantly, becoming part of the monster. Sequence 3, no, this thing, an aggregation and distortion of multiple extraordinary characteristics, its level and abilities should be quite close to Sequence 2. The thing that fought the Black Knight before should be this thing, but at that time, its level was far less terrifying than it is now. The Evernight Theater separated it, and now, the system has reorganized all such substances together, so such a something that can be called blasphemy could be born. The system's appraisal also seemed somewhat strained when faced with something that mixed so many extraordinary characteristics. Tang Ju glanced at the final result, clicking his tongue in wonder. There were 13 extraordinary characteristics at the demigod level alone, and countless more at Sequence 5 and Sequence 6. It could be said that if he could complete the separation, and redisperse and aggregate all the extraordinary characteristics, as long as the ritual was correct and the acting was proper, he could cultivate up to 13 demigods without any unexpected circumstances. One must know that even in the Fourth Epoch, in the era later known as the Age of the Gods, demigods were extremely terrifying combat units. These demigods, it seems that some of them should be miracle invokers' marionettes. For miracle invokers of their seer pathway Sequence 2, with a series of extraordinary abilities such as resurrection is a miracle, historical voids, historical projections, and marionettes, to save their lives and escape, it was quite difficult to be killed, even if they were besieged by other angels. The death of a miracle invoker would inevitably be accompanied by the death of a large number of marionettes and the use of all 4 resurrection opportunities, the complete loss of their ability to borrow spirituality from the past, and so on. And during this period, if the miracle invoker went mad and fought to the death, how many demigods could they take away before they died? Some are miracle invokers' marionettes, and some should be other demigods who fought against him during the 4 Emperors' War. After the miracle invoker died and transformed into the corresponding sealed artifact, they became part of it, and historical void images are also stored within it. As for the later stages, in the Evernight Theater which had not yet become a sealed artifact and was still in a state of being out of control, there should also be some demigods who died because they were careless and dragged into it, but there shouldn't be too many. Judging from the content given by the system, even if this sealed artifact has certain living characteristics, it doesn't have a way to move. The density of demigods wasn't that high. For the Evernight Theater which had no way to move, even if it could control the spiritual threads outside the theater, the demigods could calmly leave its control range before falling into stiffness and being controlled. Moreover, even if they accidentally entered it, like today, influenced by the law of extraordinary characteristic aggregation, the demigods who accidentally entered should have a way to greatly delay their death. So, the Evernight Theater which couldn't move was brought to Tingen by someone else. Who is it? What do they want to do? After thinking for a long time, lying on the bed, Tang Ju felt that he had overused his brain. He buried his head in the pillow and wriggled twice before reluctantly leaving the embrace of the bed and walking to the desk, snapping his fingers. The stars and the red moon outside the window had not yet disappeared, adorning the starry sky. Flames ignited the candlelight. He took out parchment and charcoal pencils from the drawer and scribbled on the parchment. The Evernight Theater originated from the Four Emperors' War and is a sealed artifact composed of the extraordinary characteristics left by the miracle invoker. This is something that neither the Orthodox churches nor those hidden organizations can let go of. This sealed artifact will eventually be sealed by the Church of the Lord of Storms, but there is no direct record of the specific information. And in the Fourth Epoch during the Four Emperors' War, the Black Emperor of the Solomon Empire, the Blood Emperor of the Tudor dynasty, the Night Emperor of the Trenches Trest Empire, and the Underworld Emperor of the Southern Continent, the seven Orthodox gods, various families with inheritance, and hidden organizations all participated. Tang Ju closed his eyes, seemingly in meditation. Then, he wrote down a string of words. The Church of the Blasphemy. This loose alliance formed by worshipping demons. He put a question mark after this string of words. Recently encountered, one is a demon that I made into a marionette, and the other is a devil that I made into a marionette in the theater. What is a demigod of the abyss pathway doing in Tingen for no reason? Moreover, have the activities of these demons been a little too frequent recently? Unfortunately, his spirituality and level didn't allow him to perform spirit channeling on a sequence 4 devil. Most of the appraisals given by the system were still about its own basic information, rather than memories and experiences. However, it was still possible to try. Just because I can't do it doesn't mean others can't. For the death console, a marionette should be equivalent to a deceased person, right? It's good to have someone to rely on. Tang Ju put down the charcoal pencil and stretched lazily. System, try to separate it and see. Is it necessary to separate the extraordinary characteristics of the marionette, fleshball, and recrush and aggregate it? This behavior is complex and requires deducting knowledge fragments, 2000. Yes. Remaining knowledge fragments, 315 feet. Is it necessary to reverse analyze the potion formulas of manipulator, arcanist, scholar, night watcher, recorder, etc.? This method requires consuming an uncertain number of appraisal chances. Note: using this method to analyze potions requires a relatively high number of appraisal chances, please choose carefully. No, he estimated that he didn't have enough appraisal chances. Okay, host, current separation progress. 0%, alright, back to square one. Re-aggregate the different extraordinary characteristics, one pathway at a time, one sequence at a time. And more precisely, one sequence 8 can be separated into one sequence 8 plus one sequence 9 potion main material. These systems can be completed separately. Oh, right, help me keep an eye out for the apprentice pathway's Beander characteristics. Tang gestured, first having the system peel off the Beander characteristics of the apprentice pathway for identification. This was because the meatball wasn't just a convergence of Beander characteristics. It was also a mixture of corpses and various mystical items, which barely allowed the system to determine the ownership of the Beander characteristics and the identities of the deceased. If there are any Beander characteristics or corpses of Abraham family ancestors, return them to Olsen and the Abraham family behind him. As for the corresponding sequence 5, sequence 6, Tang pulled up the form provided by the system, confirmed that there weren't many apprentices among them, and then had the system identify them one by one. After all, his friend was a member of the Abraham family, and the other party had helped him a lot. As for the others, such as those whose corpses were mostly destroyed, leaving only the Beander characteristics, there was nothing he could do. Clapping his hands, Tang stood up. After burning the parchment and disposing of the remaining ashes, he walked out of the room. Inside the castle, servants had already gotten up and started preparing breakfast. Tang thought for a moment, walked to the garden carefully tended by Mrs. Boyanka, found the wicker chair his father had woven, and sat there quietly watching the red moon set in the distance. As the stars dimmed, the sun gradually rose. System. Host, I'm here. Can the never-ending theater still be optimized? He suddenly wondered. Sealed artifacts are mystical items formed by the spontaneous aggregation of Beander characteristics. Without the processing of an artisan, their negative effects are relatively high, far less stable than those processed by an artisan. In the past, similar items he obtained were usually directly crushed and re-aggregated by the system, then processed by an artisan. However, those items didn't involve divinity at all. The system would show different degrees of mutation when processing the Undying's Beander characteristics, and processing the Sequence 2 Miracle Inventor's sealed artifact would be even more difficult. It can be optimized. The system replied. Tang was somewhat surprised. Don't you usually have problems processing Sequence 4 Beander characteristics? He was just asking casually and didn't expect the artisan to be able to handle it. Even if it were forced, it would probably mutate. It can be processed as long as one condition is met. There are alchemist Beander characteristics in that meatball. The system acted as if it was saying, you finally brought it up, so I won't hide it anymore. After recycling it, the artisan module's level will also increase accordingly. Processing Sequence 2 sealed artifacts will still be somewhat difficult, but it will be much easier than it is now. Tang. So it was waiting for him here. But speaking of which, whether it's the seer or the scholar, as long as it's the potions, mystical items, or corresponding Beander creatures of these two pathways, the system accepts them all. Do you want to submit the Sequence 4 Beander characteristic of the scholar pathway, alchemist, after separating the Beander characteristics of the marionette, meatball? Yes. Tang. What if I say I won't give it to you? Can't process it. Can't process it. There's a high probability of more negative effects. Scheming system, a conspiracy in broad daylight. He gave the system an internationally friendly gesture and clicked confirm. Do you want the remaining low and mid-sequence Beander characteristics? Sequence 4 is a qualitative change. In short, it's okay to have it, but it doesn't matter if you don't. Then keep them. He might be able to cultivate a few artisans in the real world with them. Always relying on the system, he always felt that his artisan chances were not enough. The system was stingy. The remaining ones included 12 demigod-level Beander characteristics, several low and mid-sequence Beander characteristics, 1 Trickmaster Beander characteristic, 1 Sequence 4 Devil, 1 Sequence 3 War Bishop Marionette, multiple low and mid-sequence marionettes, a group of ordinary marionettes, 1 Miracle Inventor's sealed artifact, plus the various mystical items still on the marionettes in the theater. There was also a Black Knight's Beander characteristic. His dad probably wouldn't like it, but he should be able to get it by crying poor a little. Apart from the Beander characteristics given to the system, the 2 marionettes could also be used as Beander characteristics if he didn't need them later. 15 demigod-level Beander characteristics plus 1 angel-level sealed artifact. This was all of his gains this time. Honestly, it was very rich. Correspondingly, the risk was also very high. If it weren't for the system, he wouldn't have taken such a big risk. At the end, if the theater doesn't plan to control us, but plans to let the marionettes swarm us, I will activate the knowledge provided by me and Olsen. He had planted a mine for the theater early on, but hadn't detonated it. However, for Rosal, who proposed the principle of the steam engine in later generations, it probably wouldn't be a good experience. Being beaten up by activated knowledge. Tang couldn't help but smile when he thought of that scene. There was still some luck involved. He sighed and gave a thumbs up to the yellow and black king who controls good luck, in his heart. The seer pathway was somewhat related to fate. Facing the sun, Tang stood up from the wicker chair and looked at Owen, who was walking over. It's rare. Owen seemed somewhat gratified. You actually got out of bed so early. Tang. Does your leg not hurt anymore? Who was the person who was hung up as bacon yesterday? Oh, it's you. Owen slapped Tang hard on the back, causing the other party to stagger. Before Tang could get angry, he said, I always feel like father seems a little off. It's normal to be a little off. Tang sat back in the wicker chair. My advice is, don't ask, don't think. It's useless to think about it. The backhand left by the god of death is not something they can solve at this level. Owen also sat down. His emotions seemed to have become colder, almost indifferent. Although it hasn't been long since I saw him, the feeling he gives me after father came back is even stronger than before. An abnormal feeling, beyond the scope of humanity, more inclined to a god, overlooking the earth. He looked at Tang, knowing that his brother had many secrets, and finally whispered his name, Tang. We can't solve it. Tang looked in the direction of the sun, his expression becoming almost indifferent. Owen, what is the sequence 4 of the death pathway called? Sequence 4 of the death pathway, undying, dying again and again, reborn again and again, memories lost and regained, this process repeats endlessly, like seeing no end. Death is not the end of everything. The death consul who had half of his soul taken away is now in this state. And he was about to die. Tang noticed this earlier than Owen. The former warmth in the other party's eyes had mostly dissipated. Although he was still gentle and still had the emotions a father should have when looking at him. The divinity belonging to the death consul was constantly oppressing his humanity. Tang couldn't be sure how long his father could maintain this state, but it wouldn't be too long. So, grow up quickly. Perhaps, only by growing to be able to become the god of death can it be resolved. Olsen slept for a night and still felt a bit of a headache when he woke up the next day. His brain wouldn't turn over, and it wasn't until the maid knocked on the door and politely asked if today's breakfast should be brought into the room that he felt a little better. No need, wait a moment, I'll be right there. He looked a little listless, walked out of the room, and happened to see Tang walking over from a distance. Good morning. Olsen greeted him without much energy. Tang, who had just finished his morning exercise, glanced at Olsen, still feeling unwell. Sort of. Olsen yawned, rubbing his eyes. The influence of the loss of control is more serious than I imagined. He thought he had only experienced a slight loss of control, but it seemed that the whispers he heard yesterday had a greater impact than he thought. Tang glanced at Olsen again. Why are you looking at me? Olsen asked strangely, is there something on my face? No, nothing. He shook his head. He just suddenly thought of a big problem. After returning to his own house for a short rest, Tang stood by the window, deep in thought. Knowledge hunts people mainly faced the struggling trickmasters and the never-ending theater, as the mastermind behind the scenes. For Olsen and Owen, although his voice was extremely sand-dropping at that time, Owen was even one sequence lower than Olsen. Even if Owen had a sequence 4 extraordinary item, the difference in their conditions shouldn't be so great. That Mr. Door of the Abraham family. He thought to himself, I'll ask Olsen about it later. The Abraham family suffered heavy losses during the Four Emperors' War. Although many high-sequence extraordinaries have fallen, there should still be some left. Have those high-sequence extraordinaries already begun to be affected by the whispers? If so, then Olsen, as a sequence 5, should also be affected in his current state. Combined with what Olsen said yesterday about hearing voices, the probability is quite high. Mr. Door and Antigonus joined forces to kill old Zeratul, and were subsequently expelled from the real world by the goddess of the night and the Lord of Storms. After that, the Abraham family suffered the curse of bloodline and whispers. By the Fifth Epoch, this family, which had produced an extraordinary person closest to a true god, completely faded out of the extraordinary stage, retaining only a small portion of extraordinaries, with the majority remaining ordinary people, even intending never to come into contact with the supernatural in their lives. In the Four Emperors' War, being exiled together by two true gods, this angel king of 3+1 was corrupted before or after that. The Four Emperors' War has been over for some time. If he can send out whispers and kill Abraham's extraordinaries from afar, then it proves that he has been completely corrupted and has split personalities. On one hand, shouting, save me, and on the other hand, shouting, don't save me, or something like that. Tang frowned, thinking of the state he was in when he entered the Knowledge Hunts People buff, seeing countless scenes. Although those scenes were also compressed by the system along with his own Sephiroth to the level of Sequence 5, many of them cannot be remembered. But that last scene gave him a creepy feeling. Mr. Door will be replaced by Amon upon his return, because his own advancement to Sequence 0 will bring about the apocalypse ahead of schedule. In short, just don't let him come back. System, is there a way to isolate Mr. Door's whispers? Tang asked cautiously. He did know of a way, which was to collectively migrate the Abraham family to above the gray fog. The whispers would be greatly amplified during the full moon. On weekdays, the high-sequence Abrahams could rely on the acting method, their own Sephiroth, and magical items to resist the whispers, but at that time, they would probably go crazy one by one. Even the enhanced version of Whispers 2.0 couldn't penetrate the gray fog. However, He wasn't the master of the gray fog, and he didn't want that someone to awaken in his body. The never-ending theater. Because it was contaminated by the power of the night, this sealed artifact, which was aggregated from the extraordinary characteristics of the miracle inventor, also possessed the ability of concealment. Regarding Tang's question, the system succinctly stated, optimization is required. Tang understood. That meant it was feasible, but the system had to add some private goods to it. A theater that hadn't been through the craftsman might not be able to completely shield it. The concealment of the night pathway should also be able to isolate it, but I'm afraid the goddess of the night, or sequence 2 of the night pathway, would have to take action. The transmission method of pollution is similar to knowledge hunts people. To spread pollution, both Sephiroth and pathway are indispensable. Sephiroth is penetration, and pathway is the channel. And the effect of the latter is far greater than the former, because Mr. Door is 3+1, and there is no existence with a higher Sephiroth than him in the apprentice pathway. The divinity that appears in demigods, plus Mr. Door perhaps left something special in his bloodline, and the two channels allowed Mr. Door to backflow pollution, causing the Abrahams to go directly mad upon advancing to sequence 4. The latest novels are first published. Tang was still thinking about this matter until he finished breakfast. Extraordinary characteristics of alchemist have been separated and submitted. Host, extraordinary characteristics of seer sequence 5 to sequence 9 have been separated. Do you want to put them into the warehouse? The system suddenly popped out. Obviously, it only needed one sequence 4 extraordinary characteristic, and the separated sequence 5 to sequence 9 extraordinary characteristics flowed back down instead. Sequence 4 is a qualitative change, the system was right about that. The craftsman module is being upgraded. Upgrade time, 3 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds, please pay attention, host. 4 hours. Tang looked at the state of that mass of flesh. The unclean object, originally aggregated from various extraordinary characteristics, was now floating sporadically around the screen. Each extraordinary characteristic was more or less stuck with some corpse flesh, and an invisible force prevented the law of extraordinary characteristic aggregation from occurring, keeping them in a state of mutual independence and non-interference. Hundreds of extraordinary characteristics floated in the dark void, and this scene was obviously quite shocking. Throwing the separated mass of extraordinary characteristics that condensed seer sequence 5 to sequence 9 into the warehouse, Tang was again worried about what to do with them. Obviously, his warehouse couldn't fit so many extraordinary characteristics. Letting them float by themselves, throwing them in the system wasn't impossible. System, if I open the never-ending theater in the real world, what will happen to these extraordinary characteristics? Tang suddenly asked. They will still be in a separated state, but they will be independent of the other parts of the theater and stored separately in a space. Then he would wait for the craftsman to finish upgrading, and he would also see what would appear after the system's optimization. Putting down his chopsticks, Baron Ramde then pushed a box to Tang. This is for you, it might be helpful to you. Tang took the box and opened it, seeing a strange upside-down cross pendant inside. Identifying, one identification chance has been automatically consumed, remaining identification chances, 34. Host, this item belongs to the extraordinary characteristics of Black Knight, sequence 4 of the secrecy prayer pathway. This is a sealed artifact formed by condensing the extraordinary characteristics of the Black Knight onto an item. When processed with the power of the underworld, the negative effects of such sealed artifacts are minimized. Tang stored it in the system warehouse, planning to use artisan to craft it into a corresponding magical item later. It's best to have as few beyonders of the seer pathway as possible. With the true creator at the top, all beyonders of this pathway are potential lunatics before he merges with that angel king. Looking at the system filled with magical items, after having breakfast, he went to the house he had previously rented in the town. Taking the life scepter from the warehouse, Tang cleaned up the materials left over from yesterday's spirit wall, then looked at the thumb tree he had spent a lot of effort moving down from the mountain, rearranged the materials needed for the ritual, and once again isolated the life scepter's influence on the surrounding proliferation power, then took out his marionette from the system warehouse. Strictly speaking, a marionette is a dead person. In the system's judgment, dead people can be put into the warehouse. Unless otherwise specified, all items in the system's warehouse will be kept in a sealed or optimal condition. That is to say, although he can only control one marionette, as long as the system warehouse is not full, he can put his marionette into the warehouse at any time and then make a new marionette. Although the upper limit of control is still 1, he can still play tricks with the marionette. Tang manipulated the Sequence 6 demon to set up a large pot in the yard, lit firewood to burn, then chopped the picked thumb fruits with a knife, removed the pits and peels, and put the remaining pulp into the pot with water to boil. Tang sat comfortably on a recliner, letting his brain relax for a while. Sometimes it's good to do physical labor without thinking. Although it was his marionette doing the physical labor. However, speaking of the acting of the marionettist, yesterday was an excellent opportunity. It was just that the situation at the time didn't allow his marionette to play, not even the possibility of attracting attention, which was regrettable. Otherwise, with so many high-sequence beyonders present, the feedback generated would have been enough for his digestion to advance by leaps and bounds. Staying quietly in the dilapidated courtyard for a while, Tang closed his eyes as if he was asleep. At this time, the fruit and water in the pot were extremely viscous after being continuously boiled at high temperature. The tall demon silently extinguished the flame, and without any protective measures, lifted the pot and placed it on the ground to wait for it to cool and solidify. At the same time, a jar of mud appeared beside Tang. This was the clay that he had asked the servants to dig out of the garden and brought out with him when he had just come out of the castle. The mud formed by mixing clay with water has an excellent decolorizing effect. Of course, the purity should not be that high, but the sugar produced will definitely be better than the sugar he bought in Tingen. Doing these things really requires a knowledge keeper. He is just a seer. These ancient sugar-making methods were all learned from reading online novels a long time ago. Recalling them through dream divination does not allow for too many changes, and there is no way to improve them. Exchanging knowledge fragments from the system, Tang glanced at his balance and decisively gave up. So host, do you need to switch to a mystic alchemist? Get lost. Okay. The system prepared to roll away quickly. Oh, by the way, there are 2 hours 3 minutes and 11 seconds left for the artisan upgrade. Waving his hand to indicate that he knew, and then instructing his marionette to take the mud and syrup together to stir, so that the pigment of the thumb fruit would precipitate, Tang continued to close his eyes for a nap. If there is no opportunity to act, I can only digest the potion through daily acting. No hurry, there is still some time. So, what I should do next is, after obtaining so many extraordinary characteristics, Tang felt that he should also prepare for the subsequent promotion ceremony. After the acting is completed and the marionettist potion is digested, there is no way to advance from Sequence 5 to Sequence 4. I can only pick and see if there are any demigods that must be killed. Prioritize sniping those who believe in evil gods, such as the true creator. The world is a better place with one less true creator. Moreover, the Sequence 4 to Sequence 3, Sequence 3 to Sequence 2, and Sequence 2 to Sequence 1 rituals can all be prepared. For the Sequence 4, the Miracle Invoker potion does not necessarily require knocking down the never-setting theater. Just use the extraordinary characteristic of the Miracle Invoker who was mentally polluted and collapsed and died. Sequence 3 should require him to catch the Hound of Fulgrim, or knock down the Sequence 3 potion in the theater. There may be multiple copies, even if it is knocked down, it will not affect the overall operation of the theater. For Sequence 2, never-setting theater can be used. As for the remaining Sequence 1, Tang also figured out where to get it. The newest and fastest novels are at Vertex Novel Network. For him, the best reason to take the seer pathway is that, if you don't consider the monocled neighbor coming over to steal the house, the top boss can resurrect the dead at any time. The materials, rituals, precautions, acting rules, and even most of the difficulties that need to be faced have already been resolved. He just needs to do it step by step and there won't be too many problems. Moreover, the promotion ceremony can also be used in a nested loop, taking shortcuts and achieving it through evil methods. For example, the Sequence 3 to Sequence 2 ritual requires a piece of history to return to reality. When advancing to Ancient Scholar, isolate a village and advance, return after 300 years, wait for the ancient scholar potion to be digested, and lift the isolation when preparing for sequence 3 to sequence 2 to complete the ritual. After advancing to sequence 2, hang the people in this village as marionettes and reenact the living painting to prepare for sequence 2 to sequence 1. System. The remaining value has been squeezed dry. This is called perfect reuse. Tang added, add 2 mermaids, and by the way, kill a demigod in that town and leave the demigod's body inside to be isolated together. System. Okay, Seer's happy town. While the system was silent, Tang opened his eyes, sat up from the recliner. Someone should have done this when the ancient scholar advanced to Miracle Invoker. Including, hiding, a village of their own to complete all the ritual requirements after becoming a demigod. After all, apart from the born Miracle Invoker, this is the easiest way. As for the people in the isolated village, in the eyes of high sequence beings, the common people should feel honored to become the ritual material for the saintly lords. So, in the Fourth Epoch, whether it is the Fourth Epoch or the Fifth Epoch, it is very difficult for the common people to even want to live. Can the people in the abyss believe in the occasional kindness of the devils? Tang looked at the pot that had already begun to absorb, and as the mud precipitated, the color of the syrup was gradually fading, and signaled the marionette on the side to scoop up the upper liquid. I think these extraordinary characteristics can serve as the cornerstone for establishing a secret organization. With the system, as long as you get the extraordinary characteristics, you can get the formula by appraisal. Even if he doesn't know it, he will know it by killing a Beander of the same pathway. And Tang also had an idea for the required ritual. Craftsman, upgrade complete. Time unknowingly slipped away. Basking in the sun, Tang, who was experiencing the quiet life and indulging in laziness according to his heart, looked at the system and opened the Craftsman module. Centered on him, the surrounding light in various buildings twisted and wriggled, radiating ripples like water. Strands of light, seemingly composed of countless basic particles, interspersed with various mystical symbols, constantly bounced out, leaping and twisting in midair. Light and shadow intertwined, and the brilliant sunlight also lost its original color, becoming somewhat gray, hazy, and illusory. Inspiration struck Tang, and he immediately noticed the changes in Craftsman. Compared to the previous, relatively monotonous embellishments within it, serving as a background board for mystical symbols, after devouring an alchemist's extraordinary characteristic, the background board behind it quietly changed. More profound, more mysterious, complex ancient patterns and various mystical symbols connected into one piece. From Tang's known mystical knowledge, only a few of these symbols pointed to knowledge, civilization, mystery, and other mystical symbols commonly used by seer and scholar pathways, beyonders. More of them were of unclear meaning, either abstract symbols of mythical creature forms exhibited by those above sequence 4 in these two pathways, demigod level, or collectively pointing to extraordinary realms currently beyond the reach of mysticism. Copying them down would probably cause quite terrible consequences. But overall, it didn't have much impact on him. Tang glanced at it and stopped paying attention. After roughly browsing the instructions given by the system, Tang submitted the never-ending theater for system optimization. Optimization begins, consuming 1 forging chance. Remaining forging chances, 22. Remaining time, 47 hours 59 minutes and 54 seconds. That's 2 days. Optimizing a sealed artifact takes much less time than creating a brand new mystical item. After upgrading the Craftsman module, it can finally stably process extraordinary items of sequence 3 and below. It compressed the processing time required, reduced the negative effects of the corresponding manufactured extraordinary items, and could stabilize more powerful extraordinary abilities. At the same time, it could create mystical items from angel-level extraordinary characteristics, but as before, if forced to do so, unpredictable mutations would occur during the creation process. The gap between sequence 5 and sequence 4 is a watershed, and the gap between sequence 3 and sequence 2 is also a watershed. One is the birth of divinity, and the other is the appearance of a complete mythical creature form. However, it's only optimization, appropriately reducing the negative effects of already finished mystical items or sealed artifacts. The system that devoured an alchemist can indeed be optimized. Because sequence 4 is a qualitative change, after meeting certain conditions, even if the selected object is the miracle inventor's extraordinary characteristic of sequence 2, craftsman can still operate on it. Moreover, craftsman can process 3 different mystical items at once. Tang pondered for a moment, threw the upside-down cross given by his father into the system to purify the spiritual imprint within it, and took out the previously prepared extraordinary characteristic of a sequence 4 arbiter, law enforcer, separated from that mass of flesh, throwing it in together with his iron chain to enhance it. Enhancing sequence 6 to sequence 4. Still only selecting one extraordinary ability, maximizing its effectiveness. The reality-enhancing decrees of sequence 4 will undergo a qualitative change. As for the rest, Tang thought about it, planning to decide later. In this way, the most important thing is the digestion of the potion. Driving a demigod-level mystical item with the spirituality of sequence 5 consumes a lot. With his sequence 5 spirituality, even if the negative effects are not strong, he cannot sustain it for too long. Having too many demigod-level extraordinary items is not necessarily bad, but it is somewhat wasteful. Flattening the last decolorized syrup on the ground, waiting for it to dry, Tang put away the secret puppet and returned to the castle. Olsen. Tang found Olsen in his garden. Olsen was squatting on the ground, not knowing what he was doing, looking at the flowers planted in the ground, acting a little strangely. Ah! Olsen raised his head, and Tang returned the magic book he had borrowed to him. This mystical item called Travel Notes was lent to him by Olsen before entering the theater. It recorded a demigod level, banishment, which helped him banish the Black Knight and helped him a lot. Speaking of which, what are you doing in Tingen this time? After returning the mystical item to Olsen, Tang took the opportunity to bring up this topic. He and Olsen had known each other for a long time, but Olsen's arrival in Tingen this time was somewhat sudden. I wanted to find a quieter place. Olsen didn't hide anything, saying it directly. I don't know why, but recently I've started hearing strange noises every night. As a traveler, distance is not a problem he needs to pay attention to. The newest and most complete novels are first published at Uptak. Sounds. Olsen mentioned it yesterday, but his condition was too bad at the time, and Tang didn't ask in detail. Now he can specifically understand what Mr. Door's murmurs are all about. Yeah, Olsen sat on the ground without any regard for his image. Whether it was because the influence of the uncontrolled state hadn't disappeared, or because he was really too tired, he didn't have the strength. It should be a kind of murmur. That still somewhat vague voice made me vaguely aware of the feeling of losing control. However, it's not serious yet. I can still bear it, and it won't affect my own stability. But what? Olsen fell silent. He pursed his lips tightly, looking somewhat hesitant. Tang, do you know what happens when a high-sequence Beander loses control? Without waiting for Tang to answer, he said to himself, they will turn into incomplete mythical creatures, indiscriminately attacking any life they can see around them. The few remaining demigods of the Abraham family since the Four Emperors' War have also gradually lost control in recent years. Some of them noticed something before nearing loss of control and exiled themselves to other places, while others did not have any mutations, but suddenly turned into monsters at some point, indiscriminately killing many Abraham children. They used many methods to investigate these problems, but all the problems pointed to Abraham himself, pointing to their bloodline. The elders noticed the problem and asked us to leave the Abraham family's clan land and find a place to block the moon. Block the moon? Tang asked, is there something wrong with the moon? I don't know. Olsen honestly shook his head. The elders, they should know something, but they didn't tell us, only vaguely mentioning the moon. There's what? What's on the moon? That's a good question. Mr. Door's whispers appear at night, peaking when the full moon and blood moon descend. It would be strange if the Abraham family didn't think these whispers were related to the moon. When Orson speaks of above the moon he refers to isn't just the moon in the real world, but also carries a mystical significance. And whether in reality or mystically, the moon generally represents. If the Abrahams only think the problem lies with the goddess of the night, targeting them would be understandable. After all, the goddess's honorific includes Crimson Lord, and most proper rituals are directed towards the goddess of the night. Of course, if they're not proper, they know of several others, and if they go to understand and contact them, then the Abrahams should prepare themselves. They'll want to have children today, and they'll want to have children tomorrow. Have one today, have one tomorrow, have as many as you want, have them however you want. Moreover, this having children has no gender restrictions. Thinking of this, the corner of Tang's mouth twitched slightly. The high sequences of the Abraham apprentice pathway, just the existence of Mr. Door alone blocks all the paths completely. Within our clan, the elders, Orson's expression was somewhat ashen, as if recalling something he didn't want to remember. After those high sequence members die, the whispers also begin to gradually affect the middle sequence beyonders. We've tried some methods, and the current conclusion is that apart from the Abraham family's own bloodline, others who advance to high sequences, although they can hear things that are difficult to hear, react much less than we do. High sequences influencing low sequences is inevitable, but with the goddess's isolation and special protection, others who advance to high sequences, excluding the Abraham bloodline, won't so easily fall victim to Mr. Door's whispers. But the Door pathway's high sequences, such as Sequence 3, the Wanderer's advancement ritual is so. Wandering the starry sky, going out at this time means being eaten until not even dregs remain. Okay, the high sequences of this pathway can be said to be ruined. The highest is probably only Sequence 4, even for non-Abraham beyonders. The only method we currently know is to find a place that can shield the moon. Orson exhaled, sitting cross-legged on the ground with the travel journal on his knees. As long as we shield the moon, I mean a place completely isolated from the moon, whether in the spirit world or the real world, if we find such a place, perhaps it can greatly reduce this influence, right? Although these are all family secrets, Orson didn't hide much. As a rising star among the younger generation of the Abraham family, and with the deaths of high sequence beyonders, his say within the clan is not insignificant. Moreover, the elders have already made the worst preparations. If the Abrahams really can only face final destruction, it's better to spread these secrets now, to be recorded and to serve as a warning to future generations. His clan is very clear about how those histories and truths seized in the flames of war disappear into the long years, leaving only fragmented words, and they understand that if they cannot solve this matter, they will sooner or later become like the Abrahams' high sequence beyonders, driven mad until death comes. Of course, another important point is that Tang is trustworthy. I have a small suggestion, I don't know if you've tried it. Tang also sat down. Before that, I want to ask, Orson, are you saying that you experience whispers when night falls? That is, when the moon appears, or is it that, even if it's cloudy and the moon is obscured, as long as the sun sets, in a dark environment, that's when the whispers appear? Orson hesitated, recalling carefully, frowning, it should be the latter. That is, as long as the sun sets, whether the moon is obscured or not, it will cause Mr. Door's whispers to appear. Then I have a suggestion, I don't know if it will work. Speak. Tang said, travelers can take people, right? And recorders can mostly record travel. Yes. As long as you expend enough spirituality, with specific spirit world coordinates, then the traveler can travel through the spirit world and travel long distances in a short time, right? Yes. Tang asked sincerely, are you afraid of the cold? Orson. So I guess. How did this topic suddenly get to this place? Afraid of being alone. So I guess. Do you have elderly or children at home or something? Orson was asked in a daze. There are, but if they are not beyonders, they should not be affected by the whispers. In that case, I have a good place to go. Tang said. The newest novels are first published here. He was initially thinking that since Mr. Door's whispers follow the moon, then let the traveler take people and follow the sun. If Mr. Door's whispers can't catch up with them, then no matter how much influence is exerted on the moon, it won't affect the Abraham beyonders under the sun. But then he thought about it. First, doing so might exhaust the traveler's spirituality. Second, from east to west, according to the layout of the entire world, the land of the abandoned gods, that is, the east continent and the west continent, travelers cannot enter. Similarly, if they insist on entering, they will encounter unimaginable dangers. And this method must have a complete path from east to west, a place where travelers can replenish and rest, and the trajectory and time of each trip must be accurately determined without the slightest error. So this plan was rejected by Tang after it went through his mind once. You go to the South Pole or the North Pole. Orson. Ah. He hesitated for a few seconds, somewhat doubtful about the words Tang said. The land of the utmost south. The land of the utmost north. What kind of place is that? Tang stood up, patted the dust off his body, and said somewhat jokingly, those two places have half the year of daylight and half the year of complete darkness. Although there may also be dangers there, going there, in theory, even if there is something on the moon, it won't be able to catch you. Although according to current history and geography, the North and South Poles have not been discovered by humans. Whether that region still has formed islands or glaciers, and whether there are sufficient resources to support human survival is also unknown. And how to obtain the coordinates of the spirit world, and whether to believe what he said, and let the family members risk going to find unknown territories, this question needs to be considered by the Abrahams. Ah, of course, I have another suggestion. Tang clapped his hands, shaking off the dirt on his hands. I happen to have an sealed artifact here. It should be able to shield the whispers, which can be regarded as solving the urgent need. Come on, Abraham's Traveler Happy House is also ready. Scheming host. Likewise. Of course, this requires confirming the optimization function of the system to reduce the negative impact of the never-ending theater. Otherwise, everyone would have to provide a miracle every time they enter, which even Tang himself couldn't afford. However, it has been confirmed that the never-ending theater, after system optimization, will be able to isolate Mr. Door's full moon talking. The degree of this isolation is definitely not as good as the gray fog, nor as good as the goddess of the night and her deer, but it is enough as long as the one on the moon does not excessively invade the real world. Next, it depends on how the Abraham family decides. Whether to try to find the illusory South and North Poles, or other methods, or to cooperate with him. With high-sequence beyonders in the family losing control and going crazy for unknown reasons, and other members of the family in imminent danger, what should they do? Although Orson is his good friend, this does not mean that Tang will provide selfless help to the Abraham family. All gifts bestowed by fate have a price tag secretly marked on them. Next, it depends on the attitude of the Abrahams. 2 days later. Host, the optimization of the never-ending theater is complete. On the third day after retrieving the Beander characteristic of the Sequence 2 miracle inventor, Tang heard the system's prompt. He was currently in Baron Ramde's study, with several jars of slightly rough but exceptionally white granular objects on the desk. How does it feel? Looking at his second son's expectant gaze, Baron Ramde nodded. Very good, whether in terms of quality or taste. Even if it were placed in Tingen, I think someone would spend a lot of money to buy it. If something is popular in Tingen, it would also have a huge market in big cities like Backland. In this way, if it can be produced in large quantities, even if the price is reduced, this refined and whitened sugar will be easier to sell. After all, compared to the expensive and rare products currently circulating on the market, which are still exclusive to the nobles, what Tang has brought out has greatly improved in terms of purity and sweetness. Tang himself understood that his provision of white sugar also benefited from the fact that countries such as Loen, Intis, and Fulsak had not been established for long, and the turmoil had not passed. Nowadays, even the basic needs of the lower classes have not been met, the social system has not been completely stabilized, and the economic foundation is only in the early stages of development. Economy, technology, and talent have not yet had the opportunity to grow. Perhaps in the future, or not long after, someone will suddenly discover and, after countless experiments, finally produce purer and easier to make white sugar. But without the accumulated foundation, they cannot easily be at the same height as the knowledge of people from another world. Tang felt that he was quite lucky in some ways. At least before the emperor came down from above the gray fog, although he, as a seer, could not make many things himself, it gave him a lot of time to do things that could be used for profit. Host, then do you want to switch to Mystic Alchemist? Please get out of my sight happily. Okay, then I'll ask again later. Tang, how is this thing getting cheaper and cheaper? Owen held a jar, reached out and pressed the white sugar inside, putting it into his mouth, looking very content. Be careful of tooth decay if you eat too much, Tang said with a fake smile. Tisk, so petty, Owen muttered in a low voice, isn't it just that I pulled you up again in the morning? Do you have to give me such a look? He was just thinking about his dear brother's health. Who is the older brother anyway? How can there be such a younger brother? Loudly in his heart, Tang, who stayed up all night dealing with some things last night, hee. I'm giving you a kind reminder, don't think of people so badly. Tang pointed to the jar in Owen's hand, half of the stuff inside has been eaten. But if you get tooth decay, believe me, I'd be happy to pull out two for you, free of charge. As for the fact that there is no proper painkiller yet, and that cavities can be filled instead of necessarily being pulled, what does it have to do with him? Why not pull out two wisdom teeth while we're at it? Owen, still saying he's not petty. Owen looked at Tang, then at the jar in his hand, and silently closed it and put it down. Father. Seeing Owen put down the sugar jar, Tang coldly turned his gaze back. He looked at Baron Ramde, who was sitting behind the desk, half of his body bathed in sunlight and half hidden in shadow. He said, I have some ideas about that sealed artifact. The latest novels are first published here. If you think it's okay, then there's no problem. After listening for a while, Baron Ramde did not reject Tang's idea of making large-scale changes in his territory. Okay. Having obtained permission and the subsequent support from the Death Consul, Tang breathed a sigh of relief. Walking out of the study, he prepared to go to Mutter Mountain. That was a winding mountain range in this territory. Because of the rugged terrain and the presence of many wild beasts, few people would enter that area. As a result, that area preserved a relatively large number of unique wild species. There were also a small number of supernatural creatures, but since his father arrived, the frequency of these creatures appearing had dropped to the lowest point. And when Tang separated from Owen and walked out of the castle alone, no one noticed that there was an unremarkable ring on the little finger of his left hand. The never-ending theater has been optimized. Host, congratulations on obtaining the Theater Manager ring X3. After wearing this ring and becoming the person in charge of the theater, you should also understand how grand and magnificent the theater is before the curtain falls. Therefore, it is your responsibility as the person in charge to schedule the distribution of resources in the theater, optimize the configuration, innovate programs, and allow the development of the theater to follow the ideals of the audience to gain their praise and recognition. Cheer, rejoice. In this never-ending theater, one miracle after another will bring unprecedented shock to the audience's body, mind, spirit. Theater Manager ring. Quality, never-ending theater, exclusive item. The person carrying this item will be regarded as a core part of the never-ending theater. Within the theater, they can coordinate with the theater core to allocate all resources within the theater. Extraordinary ability. You will be regarded as part of the theater core and will not be marionetted. As the theater manager, a trip that can be taken at any time will not disturb the normal operation of the theater. Your departure will not require any miracles. After specifically looking through the instructions provided by the system, Tang walked towards the mountain while taking out his mystical puppet from the system space. The optimization of the sealed artifact, besides adding a function to shield some unknown whispers, mostly falls on this ring. Regarding oneself as a part of the sealing core, participating in the normal operation of the entire theater. Bypassing the negative effects of the sealed artifact itself, regarding oneself as a part, while also not causing the living, sealed artifact core to resist. Did the system dig out a piece of the sealed artifact core to make this ring? No, it's not just that. System, you didn't go and lick the theater core all over to threaten it, did you? Tang looked at the ring on his little finger. The ring was engraved with many esoteric symbols, mysterious and dangerous, similar to those symbols that the craftsman released that floated around as background, symbols that current mysticism cannot touch. The entity behind the system has a higher position than the theater core. Intimidated by the higher being, the theater core is likely to show weakness, thereby abandoning part of its core power, allowing the system to make the ring. Similarly, like the netherworld, borrowed by the death pathway, which conceal the negative effects of mystical items, such as above the gray fog. The former is a special space created by the ancient death god's authority, equivalent to the ancient death god's kingdom, located deep in the spirit world, with a very high position, while the latter has even more powerful power than the true god position. Such extraordinary methods have the greatest impact and quite the right to speak. Oh, the starving that dares not wriggle. How is that possible? The system retorted loudly, this is normal. Optimization. It's optimization. Is it that kind of system? No, absolutely not. Understood. While licking, with mysticism knowledge back and forth, it also locked the theater core in a small black room, forcing the theater core to compromise, to avoid further pollution by knowledge leading to the complete loss of its own activity, or using knowledge hunts people, similar to pouring knowledge backward to let the theater core know what is called the king of hell. After all, living means being able to communicate, and can also be threatened, making concessions. Even if it is made stupid by knowledge, the core can still be used. This meal for the system is really worth it. Faced with Tang's benevolent gaze after understanding the system twisted, the system screamed, the system prepared to crawl darkly. Ha ha ha, you've seen through all this, then I won't hide it. Are you serious about this laughter? Read less novels. Shielding the system, which was full of, I'm not listening, you're talking nonsense, I'm going crazy, you're slandering me, ruining my reputation, Tang unconsciously turned the ring. It can avoid the mystical puppet transformation that comes with the theater, and it can also allow me to allocate the resources within the theater at any time. He thought as he walked forward, that is to say, I can choose who participates in the performance, and I can also prevent who from becoming a mystical puppet. The never-ending theater, if placed in the church, belongs to a level 0 sealed artifact. The highest level is extremely dangerous, with the highest level of importance and the highest level of confidentiality. It cannot be inquired about, cannot be spread, cannot be described, cannot be spied upon, corresponding to the authority and power of extraordinary angels and above. It is said that some of the level 0 sealed artifacts in the church can even destroy countries or even the world. The resources that the never-ending theater can mobilize are undoubtedly terrifying, whether it is the mystical puppet left behind that is condensed from countless extraordinary characteristics, or other extraordinary people who are normally controlled. As long as the theater is given time, with its expansion speed, it may not be long before it can envelop the entire Tingen. Everyone in the entire city jointly performs a grand drama. In this way, perhaps it will not be long before the existence of the theater itself can meet the ritual requirements for the seer pathway to advance from sequence 2 to sequence 1. Danger is indeed not in vain. Tang sighed silently. Then, with the ring of the Master of Ceremonies, can the theater also be regarded as my mystical puppet? What did you find? Tingen City, northwestern corner, dilapidated and desolate, under a tent that looks severely damaged and torn apart. This place is shrouded in the power of the night, and all things are hidden in areas that ordinary people's vision cannot see. Wearing a black and red clerical robe, with a kind and peaceful face, but giving people a sense of unspeakable fear, the old man checked the traces left at the scene, and only shook his head at the old man next to him who was clearly white-haired but looked strong and powerful. There are no special traces left behind. Judging from the testimony of those rats in the gutter we caught, there should have been a great battle here before. Archbishop Staven of the Storm Church frowned. Tingen is not as good as Backland, and the power of the church cannot radiate to all areas of ruin. These damned cultists always drill out all kinds of loopholes. There must be high-sequence extraordinary people lurking nearby, maybe he hasn't gone far yet. We can still track him. For the extraordinary people of the Storm Church, finding, asking, drawing conclusions is a very simple three-point line. But they didn't leave anything behind. The old man was still calm. The traces have been erased, leaving only some insignificant things, allowing us to confirm that this place has indeed suffered some kind of secret erosion. Even divination is extremely difficult. The intervention of high-sequence extraordinary people is inevitable, but it is impossible to determine their purpose, and what happened here after those civilians and extraordinary people escaped. The most new uptack small uptack say uptack is uptack first uptack hair. No matter what the cultists want to do, we only need to abide by the oracle given by the Lord, protect the people, and isolate the danger. The strong wind blew, the night dissipated, and the things that were originally left were completely razed to the ground, as if a circus had never appeared here, and no one had ever been here. Controlling the mystical puppet to catch a few wild rabbits, and also picking some bird eggs, Tang slowly went deep into the depths of the Mutter Mountains. He took out the pendulum that he had prepared in advance from the system warehouse, and determined the location where the theater needed to be expanded next while divining. Finding a suitable location in a mystical way, waiting for the response given by the pendulum, during this period Tang put those game into the system warehouse, preparing to go back and make some new delicacies with the newly obtained white sugar. When the pendulum gave Tang the correct response, he took out a black box from the warehouse. The box is square, and looks unremarkable. It is very light, and the volume is also very small, which is very convenient. Tang opened the box, revealing the exquisite and compact puppet inside. In an instant, an invisible force came from the inside out. The night seemed to shroud the sky, and a huge curtain quietly and invisibly appeared above, covering the sun. What should the secret organization be called? Tang thought. He tilted his head. How about calling it Miskatonic Note 1? Miskatonic University. Does this really exist in the real world, or is it a certain period of history in the past? Miskatonic. Abbreviation for Miskatonic University, a fictional university in the Cthulhu system. The school has extremely high standards in fields such as archaeology, psychology, mysticism, and medicine. The library has a rich collection of books on mysticism and has trained many legendary investigators. Could Cthulhu mythology be considered a returning history? Tang looked towards the sky. The afternoon sun was still bright, but the serene and humorous colors under the blue sky and white clouds were replaced by deep black, as if day had instantly turned into night. Beneath the vast, seemingly infinitely high dome, boundless darkness formed by the complete fusion of twisted knowledge and darkness stretched out. Countless star-like objects twinkled upon the silently unfolding giant curtain, tranquil and peaceful, yet subtly revealing terror, distortion, and strangeness in the shadows. It's like staring into the abyss, and the abyss is returning the gaze, Tang muttered, twitching the corner of his mouth. These countless stars, based on occult symbols, represent higher-level forces, influencing the very power of this sealed artifact, enhancing concealment, and shielding it from the spirit world and various extraordinary powers from any external world. This book is first published on twkan.com across the entire web. He sensed it slightly, and found that under the shroud of the curtain, he could no longer seek answers from the spirit world through divination. The spirit world was isolated, similar to the situation when entering the unrecycled, never-ending theater, severing internal and external connections, akin to the simplified divine kingdom that Sequence 1, the Mystery Keeper, could create. However, the dome curtain, mixed with various mystical powers, should have stronger isolation. It shouldn't be comparable to the gray fog and the goddess of the night, but it would be stronger than other beyonders who are more adept at creating similar domains. It should be able to isolate Mr. Door's whispers. I'll bring Olsen in tonight to test it out. Tang withdrew his gaze. After being enveloped by the huge curtain, all the surrounding natural light disappeared without a trace. It seemed that he had also been transported into a strange space. The moment the black box in his hand was opened, it turned into starlight and dissipated into nothingness, merging into the surroundings. The feeling underfoot was not the muddy unevenness of the mountains and forests, but a soft sensation. It seemed to be a carpet, or perhaps the skin of some kind of monster. Darkness, absolute darkness and silence surrounded him. The theater opened, but not as Tang had imagined, with cheers and applause surrounding him, but with deathly silence. It was as if all the marionettes had fallen into a standby state, with no one activating them, so naturally there would be no cheers or applause. However, in this environment, Tang felt that his seer's intuition was frantically triggered. Even without the shouts of the marionettes, they should be hidden in the shadows, with countless eyes staring at him from the darkness, as if scrutinizing and pondering. The core of the theater is alive. Although it has been optimized by the system, this characteristic has obviously not been erased. Tang moved his hand, and the ring on his left pinky finger lit up with a faint light, dispelling the surrounding darkness. The light quickly illuminated Tang's surroundings. A delicate cane appeared not far in front of him to his left. Identifying, one identification chance has been automatically consumed. Remaining identification chances, 33. Host, this item belongs to sequence 4 of the Seer pathway, the extraordinary characteristic of a trick magician, plus sequence 5 of the Monster pathway, the extraordinary characteristic of a winner, forming a sealed artifact. Tang raised his eyebrows. It should be the trick magician who went completely crazy and died from his knowledge devourer, combined with the cane in his hand called a moment of luck, to become this product. As for what kind of sealed artifact it formed, Tang flipped through the report given by the system identification, then stepped forward, grabbed the cane, and threw it into the system warehouse. The light source shifted with Tang's movements. Countless darkness enveloped the surroundings, and even more terrifying monsters seemed to be hidden beneath the darkness, but Tang was not afraid at all, and followed the instructions of the seer's intuition forward. The originally spacious stage seemed to be condensed, and Tang reached the edge of the stage in a few steps. The light illuminated the marionettes sitting in the audience seats. The light could not illuminate all the marionettes. The reflection of the light made them even more eerie and terrifying. The marionettes, as if endless, with stairs leading to the unknown realm constantly extending, were all exquisitely made, with smiles on their faces and no sideways glances, with breathing and body temperature, like the most expensive simulation dolls, but Tang was very clear that these were truly living people. However, they would not move on their own, would not speak on their own, eat, or sleep. All physiological phenomena originated from the puppeteer behind the scenes. After seeing these lifelike marionettes, the lights on the stage suddenly lit up. On the huge stage, a magician wearing a top hat and a fitted red suit stood quietly, staring at Tang's direction. Tang met his gaze. After a long time, the magician bowed to Tang. The ring was heating up, and spirituality poured into it frantically. At this moment, his will seemed to be above the entire theater, overlooking the huge playing house, in front of him. Cheer. Rejoice. Miracles will happen here. The greatest miracle of this era is about to begin. After roughly scanning the never-ending theater, Tang looked at the ordinary people here again, preparing to lift their marionette-like state. After removing the historical projection, the number of ordinary people marionettes in the theater also reached an astonishing level, which was staggering. The newest novels are first published on. But they are not very useful, they can only simply act as atmosphere enhancers and shout slogans. The Four Emperors' War was more than 200 years ago. During this period, the never-ending theater may have eaten enough ordinary people to turn them into its own marionettes. Of course, there were also beyonders among them, whether active or passive, and beyonders of low and mid sequences were also not in the minority. It's hard to imagine how much wealth he could accumulate if he just killed them all, extracted their extraordinary characteristics, and sold them. But there is still a problem. The core of the theater is hiding from him. Through the connection of the ring, he could clearly feel that there was another consciousness thinking, in the theater, quietly observing him while wandering between countless marionettes, but when Tang looked over, that consciousness would quickly shift its position. Looks like it's scared enough. It looked like it had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. The core of the theater doesn't care about him now, acting like, do whatever you want, completely refusing to communicate with him face to face. But this gave him enough authority. As the person in charge of the theater, it's not too much for Tang to take a few marionettes for himself, right? In addition to returning the extraordinary characteristics to Olsen, and the Abraham members who strayed in or were involved in the Four Emperors' War, Tang also found 2 traveler marionettes. Let the theater disconnect its manipulation of the spirit threads, and then Tang connect to them, and the marionette will change its owner. This is much happier than going outside to find beyonders to hang up. Tang looked at the marionettes here with a kind expression. This role-playing game, he will use one and throw one away in the future. It's still a bit wasteful. Task status updated. Task: a small attempt by a marionettist. How can a marionettist not have their own marionette? Please hurry and find a spiritualist who can be made into a marionette. Please remember that the quality of the marionette is also important. Create your own marionette. Task completion, 3/3. Status, completed. Congratulations, host, appraisal chances +5, remaining appraisal chances, 38. Artisan, uses +1, remaining forging chances, 24. Number of knowledge fragments +100, remaining knowledge fragment count, 415. New task updated. Side mission, establish join a hidden organization. With the fall of the blasphemer god, the orthodox gods are gradually fading from people's sight. The arrival of the outer gods, the awakening of the great will is imminent, and when the future comes, when the orthodox gods die, when the unknown erodes the world, perhaps in the next millennium, or perhaps in the millennium after that, the world will eventually undergo unparalleled changes. Therefore, perhaps you, as an outsider, should make some preparations in advance. Note: this task has a certain bias, please choose a preference as soon as possible. The arrival of the outer gods, the awakening of the great will. Tang stood on top of a huge half-open iron gate, flipping through the task prompts given by the system. Does this side mission involve prophecy? Is it referring to the true creator, or those from outer space? His brow furrowed slowly. He knew that the great will referred to the great existence above the gray fog, as well as the ancient sun god and the like. As for the death of the orthodox gods, it should refer to the god of war, right? Or is this a sign that the gods' defenses will fail in the future, allowing those things from outer space, or other, even more terrifying things to awaken and erode the entire world? Having come from the seer pathway, Tang easily noticed the various vague references in this passage. He always felt that the system's side mission prompt was seriously flawed, as if it said something, yet said nothing at all. It might as well have kept its mouth shut. And this rhetoric, system, why are you acting like a seer? Tang said with some disdain, speaking only halfway, how many seers did you eat? System, huh, host, you're cursing so foully. Can you give me a hint? What exactly are you referring to? Be a little clearer. The system was somewhat speechless. Dunno, think for yourself. Shutting down, playing dead. Seeing that the system was unresponsive, Tang knew that the system must be restricted by a higher power, and couldn't really spit anything out. With that, he had no choice but to close the system interface, jump down from the iron gate, and look around again. Looks like I can only take it one step at a time. Father will die soon, perhaps in a week, perhaps in a month, but it won't be too long after all. Before that, I must make some preparations first. For himself, for that big Owen, for his mother, there were still many things to be busy with. After an afternoon, the never-ending theater was transformed by Tang. At this time, the top of the theater was no longer a black, infinitely high curtain adorned with countless twinkling stars, but synchronized with the natural and external celestial phenomena. After all, this was inside the theater. Consuming a certain amount of the sealed artifact's own power to simply synchronize the celestial phenomena was extremely simple. And for the theater core, as long as it didn't touch the principles, it would concede as much as it could now. The external sky reflected on the ceiling, the setting sun gradually descended, and a red moon quietly rose. At this time, Tang was standing on a clearing, surrounded by countless surrounding architectural phantoms, but they had no substance, but were hidden behind layers of shadow curtains, looming, like nothingness, yet like reality. They were just phantoms produced by miracles. Before true miracles descended upon them, they would remain in this state for a long time. At this time, the largest building was the huge, dark iron gate behind him. There were no marionettes around, no shouts. The tranquility, the peace of mind brought by the wide field of vision was something Tang hadn't felt in a long time. The marionettes were all hidden by him in another space. Without those bizarre things staring at him, the environment inside the theater was inexplicably refreshing. If I lived in here, it wouldn't be a bad enjoyment. The newest and fastest novels are first published at. Inside the theater, all miracles will be satisfied, and living here would be an enjoyment. Away from strife, away from those ubiquitous terrifying things, the huge curtain blocked all prying eyes from the unknown. If he could stay in this place until the end of his life, perhaps he could accept it. It was a man-made Garden of Eden. Even so, Tang turned around and looked at the iron gate behind him. The dark iron gate was deep and profound, and the other end of the gate was connected to reality. Tang crossed it without hesitation. Walking through the huge iron gate was like falling into the clouds, returning to the human world. The iron gate behind him gradually closed and dissipated. The huge curtain of the never-ending theater floated in the sky, invisible to anyone. In this area, it would remain in a closed state unless instructed by the person in charge, but this state would not last too long. Because ring of the person in charge. Negative effect. If you can't bring miracles and surprises to the theater for a long time, then you will be the theater's biggest surprise. Benefits and risks go hand in hand. Those who cannot bring miracles to the theater and satisfy miracles cannot be the master of the theater. Very good, this is very much a level 0 sealed artifact. Clapping his hands, Tang took out his new marionette. As a marionettist, although the upper limit is to control one marionette, he has a system warehouse, and it is easy to change to a favorite marionette anytime, anywhere, without even needing a complicated prayer to summon a spirit body to the gray fog. Look at his new marionette. Look, a traveler. Finally, I don't have to run around, and I don't have to take a bumpy carriage to Tingen in the future. This was a female marionette who looked 27 or 28, with a gentle face, smooth long hair casually falling on her shoulders, and wearing a black robe, which seemed a bit mysterious. Her name was Angie, from the Tudor dynasty, and was one of the victims of the Four Emperors' War. As Tang directly manipulated the spirit body, the marionette put her hand on Tang's body, and the surrounding rich color blocks began to become distinct as they entered the spirit world. After dinner, as the red moon rose, but before it reached its zenith, Tang pulled Ol Sun into the never-ending theater. As he expected, the person he acknowledged would not be transformed into a marionette. Although the theater's hidden core still wanted to hang Ol Sun up like cured meat, it was ultimately wary of the mad ramblings it had heard when it was sealed, and turned a blind eye. This is. Ol Sun was clearly dumbfounded, looking at the corpses neatly packed and the extraordinary characteristics placed with them. He was in a state of utter confusion, wondering, who am I? Where am I? What is all this? These are the remains of members of the Abraham family and their extraordinary characteristics, left behind in this sealed artifact, Tang explained. Seeing Ol Sun's incredulous expression, Tang shrugged. As long as the sealing is done correctly, you can completely pry these things out from under the sealed artifact's control. But, they only encountered the terrifying sealed artifact a few days ago, right? Right. No problem, right. That's how it is, right. It's not like he slept for a month or a year, is it? You have to know, a sealed artifact capable of easily killing Sequence 4 Beyonders has definitely reached the level of an angel. That's equivalent to a 0-grade sealed artifact within the church. All 0-grade sealed artifacts represent the church's most core power. Each 0-grade sealed artifact sealed by the church, if no deity participates, represents a large amount of experimentation in a long cycle. It is extremely difficult to control a 0-grade sealed artifact. The angel level represents powerful power, loss of control, madness, and weirdness. Even the orthodox churches don't have many 0-grade sealed artifacts. Tang just sealed a 0-grade sealed artifact and separated its marionette. How long has it been? Ol Sun felt like he hadn't woken up yet. He looked at the extraordinary characteristics on the ground and then at Tang, who was examining the huge, dark iron door. While his heart was filled with unparalleled shock, he forced himself to calm down. Calm down, calm down. Tang's father seems to be a high-sequence Beander. Perhaps it's also due to the help of that high-sequence Beander. It couldn't possibly be a heretic god who helped. He controlled his emotions, maintained his spirituality, so as not to scare himself into losing control. After sorting out his thoughts, Ol Sun looked at the extracted extraordinary characteristics, his heart filled with complex emotions. Among them, he saw a demigod-level extraordinary characteristic. He only glanced at it before averting his gaze, not allowing his already somewhat out-of-control state to fall in an even more unpredictable direction. On behalf of the Abraham family, thank you, Tang. "Thank you very much," he mumbled. To be honest, Tang could have completely pocketed them. As long as he didn't say anything, no one would know what belonged to the Abraham family among the marionettes and hidden extraordinary characteristics within the theater. This favor was far greater than the other party pulling him out of the theater, and greater than telling him about the possible ways to resist the whispers. It was too much, and he couldn't make the decision himself. It was a favor he couldn't repay. Seeing this reaction, Tang knew that his attempt to win over the Abraham family was almost certain. Stay here for a while and see if the whispers appear. Tang had just carved a few more flowers on the iron door to pass the time. After Ol Sun nodded and began to collect the extraordinary characteristics on the ground, he flashed out of the theater and released his traveler marionette, traveling back to the castle again. The red moon rose, and the eerie, huge moonlight was displayed in the sky. Looking at it for too long felt like falling into it, unable to extricate oneself. Tang walked to the outside of his study door, pushed it open, and walked in. Servants had already lit the flames in the study, illuminating the interior brightly. Owen had been sitting inside for an unknown amount of time, and was now holding a book of poetry with a look of bitter hatred. Tang glanced at it. Oh, Intis literature. Looks like everything went smoothly. When Owen saw it was Tang, he subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief and threw the poetry collection, like a hot potato, on the table. This is simply like spiritual pollution, he complained somewhat. It's always good to look at it more. Tang motioned for the traveler marionette next to him to move a chair over. Owen glanced at the traveler marionette. A new marionette. Speaking of this, Tang had a smile on his face, and there was some boasting in his words. A traveler. You have to know, travelers are very difficult to kill, even among all the low and mid-sequence beyonders. If you don't make thorough preparations in advance, trying to kill or marionettize a traveler is simply wishful thinking. But he has too. Owen shrugged, not asking where Tang got the traveler marionette, just like he never asked who Tang's craftsman friend was. After Tang had the marionette stand beside him, he also sat down. I have a general understanding of the source of that sealed artifact. The marionette captured by the never-ending theater, as long as it is below sequence 2, is equivalent to being subjected to its deep spirit channeling. Before returning, Tang had already called over the sequence 4 devil and asked him everything. The other party was indeed a member of the blood worship sect, worshipping the heretic god, the dark side of the universe. This time, it was that heretic god they worshipped who issued an oracle. The dark side of the universe issued an oracle. Owen widened his eyes, somewhat incredulous. A large amount of blood sacrifice, that's roughly the meaning. As for what the dark side of the universe wants to obtain through the sacrifice, or perhaps to satisfy the needs of some kind of ritual, that demon is not clear. But he's not the guy who unfolded the theater and turned many people into marionettes. Through the devil's description, Tang roughly understood that the one who cooperated with this devil was an apostle of desire. Not even a demigod, the devil was very clear about this, but what exactly was his identity, and why did he have the confidence to cooperate with a bloodthirsty devil? Wasn't he afraid that the other party would turn on him and snatch the theater? The blood worship sect is, after all, a loose alliance. Among them, the demons who have gone through the fallen angel sequence have no concept of companion at all. Killing and seizing treasures is very common. 0-grade sealed artifacts are rare treasures no matter where you go. But this point was not specifically revealed even in the theater's deep spirit channeling. When mentioning that apostle of desire, the devil's marionette even trembled slightly. This was the most core thing simulated by the theater, and it was also the point that Tang suspected the most. Whether it was ignorance or intentional erasure, a mid-sequence Beander who could make a demigod tremble, this is a very tricky guy, and he even turned the tables on the devil who cooperated with him, leaving him in the theater as a material for the ritual. Cold-blooded, indifferent, not treating people as people. Beyonders of the Abyss pathway and Beyonders of the Seer pathway are equally damned. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.